Chapter 46-46. You're still thinking of catching a big fish from me? Don't lose more than you gain. Mu Qingya yelled coldly. With you as the bait, don't worry. I won't fail. Arbor curled his lips at her, revealing a mocking sneer. That really doesn't look like a smile. Mu Qingya thought. It was as if a knife was carving an arc at the corner of his mouth. It was so cold that one couldn't help but feel uneasy. After all, although you're heartless, there's no lack of infatuated people around you. Shut up. Mu Qingya didn't want to listen to the little crown princess's nonsense anymore. The more she listened, the angrier she got. Although the little crown princess usually didn't talk much, when she used words to poke people, they were all soft knives that made one's whole body hurt. What do you think you have to be proud of? Mu Qingya scolded angrily. It's just because the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl is in your body and has subtly changed your constitution. If that's not the case, why don't you try it? Isn't it because you have a powerful family behind you? The Forgotten River Dragon clan has thousands of years of heritage. Long Chuyun secretly passed the Dragon clan's treasure to you. Crackle. A vine whip whipped Mu Qingya's body, killing all the words she hadn't finished speaking. It's luck and fate, Arbor replied coldly. It's useless even if you're envious. After saying that, he coldly watched as Mu Qingya was dragged into the lower cabin by the two people like a dead dog. Arbor, you'll regret it. Arbor. Mu Qingya shouted in an impassioned tone as she was dragged away. Arbor sneered and glanced disapprovingly in the direction Mu Qingya left. I'm regretting it now. Xiao Mu thought, I regret that I didn't capture you back to die earlier. That would have saved you from jumping around like a grasshopper in front of me. Arbor was not in the mood to continue talking nonsense with Mu Qingya. He quickly walked to the beach and looked around. Afraid of disturbing Qin Nidian, the group only dared to stop at a place far away from the beach and sneak a peek at this senior. Jojo, does Martial Uncle Qin mean that in the future, when we stay on the ship, we will be able to enjoy the 12-fold speed of the star domain? Qi Xian lowered her voice and asked. Arbor nodded. Yes. Not only that, but Martial Uncle also said that the speed could be increased threefold, and the entire ship carried a trace of spatial power. Perhaps, within a certain range, once the conditions were met, the ship would be able to tear through space and travel thousands of miles in a single day. Jojo, Martial Uncle is too amazing. Qi Xian muttered softly, let's not disturb her. Let's go and prepare some food. After Martial Uncle finishes refining, we can start eating. Arbor glanced at Qi Xian. Alright, I'll grill the fish for the next few days. No need. Qi Xian hurriedly dragged out her tone and said with a smile, with Ma Ta and little Fatty around, you don't need to personally grill the fish. Arbor blinked. Jojo's Lien loves to eat the colorful divine fish grilled by Jojo the most. That's because Her Highness has no choice. Qi Xian cursed in her heart. She coughed lightly and winked at Ma Ta. Ma Ta hurriedly stepped forward and said with a smile, Jojo, you don't have to do anything today. Ma Ta and I will take care of everything. Yes, don't tire my Jojo out. Chapter 46-47. I want to roast it for Aunt Master. Sir Jojo suddenly said. Qi Xian was taken aback, and then she coughed lightly. Jojo, it wasn't easy for Aunt Master to come from afar. If there's a chance next time, I'll let you do your best. You'd better not poison Aunt Master. Not everyone could be like His Highness, who could accept everything without batting an eyelid. He would eat everything that was roasted, burnt, or roasted to an unrecognizable state. His Highness wasn't an ordinary person. Not many people could be as calm as His Highness in the face of a disaster. Facing a pile of roasted mess, he could still maintain a graceful, cultured, and refined smile, as if what he ate was some exotic delicacy. Jojo's lotus praised me for my improvement. Everyone, could it be that I didn't improve? Arbor turned to look at Feng Chongqing and his brother. The two brothers immediately switched sides and nodded without any integrity. Of course you improved. Your Holiness, please roast it. We'll prepare more ingredients for you. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal inexplicably wanted to laugh. These Phoenix clansmen were truly hilarious. The corners of Qi Xianxian and the others' mouths twitched as they thought to themselves, you guys don't even need to eat. You're all jumping around happily. Aunt Master, Senior, must have suffered. She painstakingly made a spaceship for her little niece, but she still had to eat a roasted barbecue later. Against the heavens said it would take 6 hours to refine this spaceship. In reality, she finished it in about 4 hours. The little stoic was a bit excited, and she was the first to dash onto crimson firmament blue waves and wandered around. The others were naturally very curious, and they hastily followed her onto the spaceship to experience the power of time. Among this group, the ones who were the most astonished were naturally Long Ji and Long Shangyun. They had never experienced such a terrifying flow of time before. Does this mean that we'll stay here for a day and a night, but only 4 hours will have passed outside? Yes, that's what it means. Qi Xianxian nodded and said, in the past, this spaceship was already very fast. Now, Senior said it has to be 3 times faster. The most ridiculous thing was the flow of time, all right. In the future, when he sailed on the sea, it wouldn't affect his cultivation. For those who were bound to sail at sea for 10 days to half a month, it was too cost-effective. He had already spent more than 100 days cultivating on the ship. It should be more than enough for him to do anything. Long Shangyun looked at Arbor with a complicated expression. At this moment, she was completely convinced by this little crown princess. What kind of weirdos were around him? Little treasure, did you roast all of these? Against the sky picked up a colorful divine fish with a slightly withered skin and took a bite. Although it was a little burnt, the fish meat was very soft and tender. It melted as soon as it entered his mouth. He felt a faint energy slide into his mouth and circulate through his limbs and bones. This fish is really not bad. Martial Uncle, I've packed some delicious food for you. Take it back and eat it. The little stoic handed a sacred-grade gold talisman storage talisman to His Excellency Qin Nitian and said in all seriousness, they're all my favorites. Let me think, Aunt Master and Master should also like them. Qin Nitian's eyes lit up. Everyone was speechless. Such an expression was simply too familiar. Usually, when the little stoic and Qi Xianxian were faced with delicious food, their eyes would always light up like this. Chapter 46-48. Although the little stoic kept a straight face all the time and would tell them with a chuckle, I'm not a foodie. But reality proved that she was a foodie, so she had to admit it. After eating, Nitian pulled the little stoic's hand and said earnestly, little treasure, you still have 2 soul fragments left. You have to find them as soon as possible. Martial Uncle is leaving. She could feel the fretful urging of heavenly Tao. You're leaving now. The little stoic didn't loosen her grip on his hand, her face showing reluctance to part. Nitian chuckled and lightly knocked her head twice. Speaking of which, little treasure didn't recognize Uncle at first glance. Do you think this is right? You actually don't even recognize Uncle. Uncle's ability to forcefully change the topic was truly. Arbor looked at her exasperatedly and sized her up. He pointed at her small body and said, that's because Uncle is worlds apart from your original appearance. Uncle's change is truly too great. Little Nitian knocked her on the forehead. That shouldn't be the case. Uncle still needs to prove himself to know. Ridiculous. The little stoic pursed her lips. Yes, it's my fault for not recognizing Uncle in time. I'll definitely change in the future and won't be like this again. Only then did His Excellency Qin Nitian nod with a grin. Uncle is leaving now. You have to be well and let Uncle and your master be at ease. Arbor nodded. I will, uncle. Just as he finished speaking, everyone noticed that His Excellency Qi Nitian's figure was abruptly lifted up. Only then did everyone realize that His Excellency Qi Nitian's limbs and body had long been bound by who knew how many transparent heavenly chains. They heard that old geezer Heavenly Law's flustered and exasperated voice. Qi Nitian, you're ruining the Heavenly Law here again. How can you secretly refine weapons for her? Hurry up and scram. Don't meddle in the affairs of this place anymore. I'm warning you, if you come again, I'll break your dog legs. The word dog legs reverberated in the air, leaving behind a series of trembling endings. It could be seen that the old man was truly enraged. Now, he didn't even want to show his face. He directly grabbed Qi Nitian and teleported away. Qi Nitian had an innocent look on his face. Isn't it a habit of being rebellious? Tian Dao, roll, 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 roll. Uncle Master. Jojo jumped up and looked up at the sky. Little treasure, take good care of yourself. Qi Nitian's figure went down at the speed of light. He was pulled into the layers of clouds by the heavenly Dao and disappeared in an instant. Xiao Mu was originally in a joyous mood, but now, her mood became uncertain and erratic again. He was not happy. The heavenly Dao was a big liar. He had promised that he could spend 24 hours with Martial Uncle. In the end, less than 12 hours had passed and he was already urging his martial uncle to scram. Jojo, don't worry. Qi Xianxian comforted him softly, I don't think the heavenly Dao will be able to control Qi Nitian. At that time, if your excellency wants to see you, you can just sneak over. Hearing this, little fatty nodded his head. Yes, that's right. Jojo, don't be upset. Let's go now. Before little fatty could finish his comforting words, everyone looked up at the same time and squinted their eyes to look at a flying spiritual tool coming from afar. This flying spiritual tool was obviously not cheap. On the outside of the cabin, there was a clan emblem. The 8th night watch ended. It was time to sleep. Chapter 46-49. The distance was rather far, so no one paid attention to it. When they got closer, they realized that there was a dragon and phoenix insignia on the outside of the air transportation spirit tool. It was inlaid with gold and jade, and there seemed to be the word duo in the middle. Long Shangyun's expression changed when she saw the insignia. Oh no, the people from the Forgotten Creek Duo clan are here. If the Forgotten Creek Duo clan received news that their young master had been captured by Arbor, they would not let the matter rest. On the contrary, Xiao Mu's expression didn't change much, and she merely swept that person an indifferent glance. They drove such a large air transportation spiritual artifact here. Why? Are the people from the Forgotten Creek Duo clan here to seek revenge? Qi Xianxian pouted unhappily. Revenge or death, I don't know. Mata shrugged and stretched his neck. But I ate a lot just now, so it's not a bad activity to fight a few rounds to digest. As they spoke, the air transportation spirit tool descended from the sky and stopped on the beach. As soon as the spirit artifact cabin opened, everyone looked at each other in dismay. 3 young men took the lead and ran out of the cabin. They hurriedly found a beach and threw up. Then, an old man with thin eyes and a green face came down from the cabin. He glanced at the young men with an unpleasant expression. Why is he here? Long Shangyun's expression changed again. Long Huan also frowned slightly and whispered to everyone, this is the most difficult elder to deal with in the Forgotten Creek Duo clan, Wang Xian. Duo Shanming is his personal disciple. Long Huan saw that person walking over and hurriedly explained the old man's identity. Wang Xian has a bad temper. Cousin, you have to be careful. He's coming. Damn, how many people did he bring with him in the spirit tool cabin? Why did a bunch of people come down and throw up? How bumpy is it? Long Huan could not help but smile bitterly. In this world, not everyone is like Cousin, who has countless air transportation spirit tools. The Duo clan is considered a large clan in the Forgotten Creek, but to have air transportation spirit tools, one has to be at least an elder. Their air transportation spiritual tools can't compare to my cousin's, be it in terms of space or speed. Usually, an air transportation spiritual artifact that can carry 300 people can carry 400 to 500 people at most. It's not like it can't fly if you squeeze it a little, Long Qian said with a light cough. Thus, everyone kept their mouths shut. Young Master Long was right this time. He really couldn't use Jojo's standards to judge others. Arbor glanced at Long Huan casually. Familiar? Long Huan smiled bitterly and shook his head. Not really. It's just that the third miss of the Wang Chuan Duo family has a marriage alliance with our Long family. The two families have some connections. Arbor chuckled. Long Qian was speechless. She knew that it would be useless to say it out loud. This was because Lord Jojo might not even be willing to give face to the Long clan of Wang Chuan, so why would he care about the future of the Duo clan of Wang Chuan? Elder Wang of the Forgotten River Duo clan is said to have reached the late-stage immortal venerable realm. Long Huan reminded softly. This person's strength is not to be underestimated. If possible, it's best not to fight him head-on. Before Long Huan could finish the word head-on, the Tsang Prefecture Emperor's cold rebuke came from beside him. You're courting death. The rising silver-white flame was like a winding silver dragon, rushing rapidly towards Elder Wang on the opposite side. At the same time, a trace of shock flashed across Elder Wang's eyes. Chapter 4650. Cough. He actually coughed out a trace of blood in front of everyone, and he stumbled back 2 steps. Before the little stoic could react to what happened, she saw Duan Yu attacking the old man. His attack was very ruthless. When the silver-white flame rushed in front of the old man, it suddenly exploded. Specks of saint power swept out like a tide and instantly surrounded the old man. Elder Wang stumbled back 2 steps, but he still couldn't steady himself. His head buzzed, and his entire body shuddered several times. In the blink of an eye, Wang Xian saw a slender figure leap in front of him. A soundless silvery white flame leaped from the man's slender fingertips, and he flung it at him without a word. Elder Wang naturally wouldn't foolishly stand there and wait for death. In his haste, he didn't have time to dodge. His brain made the quickest judgment and mobilized all the sacred energy in his body to form a partial defensive divine armor. Wang Xian wanted to block that flame attack in front of him. However, he couldn't block it at all. The old man watched helplessly as that leaping silvery white flame burned a hole in the partial divine armor. The flame without any heat took advantage of the situation to burn his face. This unforeseen event happened very quickly. Duan Yu's method was ruthless and vicious, burning that old man's face. In a flash, everyone discovered in horror that the old man's entire head was enveloped by the silvery white flame. It felt like he was wearing a silvery white helmet. The flame burned neither too quickly nor too slowly as it enveloped the old man's head, slowly combusting without any wind. Those youths who vomited from the jolt all retreated with ghastly pale faces. They only dared to hide far away behind the spirit artifact cabins and shouted at the old man, "Elder Wang, Elder Wang." They didn't dare to do anything else. They stared at Duan Yu as if he was a moving devil, not daring to move an inch. What kind of joke was this? Even Elder Wang, who was at the transcendent god realm, was subdued by that young man in a single exchange. Even if they were given 18 times more guts, they still wouldn't dare to go up and throw away their lives. "Jojo, are you alright?" At this time, Yuan Shichen, Feng Chongqing, and the others had already rushed to Arbor's side. Their expressions were not very good as they carefully sized her up. Xiao Mu was muddle-headed, and her pitch-black eyes were still a bit perplexed. She glanced at Shichen and the others before looking at Qi Xianxian, the little fatty, and the others, who were also full of question marks. What could happen to me? Does your head hurt? Do you feel unwell? Are you dizzy or not? Can you still stand? The peony fairy squeezed through the crowd to the little stoic side and repeatedly asked, "Do you want me to help you sit down?" The little stoic looked at them with a question mark on her face. She turned to look at Duanyu, who was currently throwing a tantrum at the elderly man, and then glanced at He Chen and the others, who had unsightly expressions. "May I ask, what happened? What the hell?" Long Yun was just speaking properly, so why did Duanyu flare up at the drop of a hat? She hadn't even made a move yet, but Duanyu had already rushed out to hit the old man. She truly couldn't understand what was going on. Yuan Shichen was taken aback, and then he sized her up. At the same time that he sighed in relief, he couldn't help but ask, "You don't feel anything?" "I don't." "Feel what?" The little stoic's question mark face turned into curiosity. Dao Wuji's loud voice couldn't resist shouting, "Eh? You really don't feel anything?" Just now, that old man launched a one-on-one divine perception attack at you the moment you met. Does your head not hurt? Are you dizzy? Are you dizzy? Chapter 46-51. No pain, no dizziness, no discomfort. I'm completely fine. The little stoic swept a speechless glance over the nervous crowd and spread her small hands at Ma Shichen. I'm fine, I didn't feel anything. Could you guys have sensed wrongly? Did the old man really attack me? Feng Zhangfei couldn't resist rolling his eyes and sighed with a sigh. Look, where does she look like she's not fine? If she really was hit by that villainous old man's divine sense attack, would she still be able to stand? Would she still be able to speak so much with her divine sense so clearly? They were simply nervous for nothing. This caused him to become nervous like his elder brother. Feng Zhangqing heaved a sigh of relief and then curiously sized up Arbor. Jojo, that elder from the Wangchuan Duo clan, is at the late-stage venerated immortal realm. His divine sense is at least at the peak of level 8 divine sense. Do you have some kind of magic treasure on you that can defend against divine sense attacks? Arbor reflexively scratched her head. The golden talisman jade tome counts, right? Just now, she seemed to have seen some light flash past her conscious and then directly dissipate after being shaken by the golden talisman jade tome's golden light. However, even without the golden talisman jade tome's recoil effect, that level 8 divine sense shouldn't be of much use to her, right? Arbor said meekly, I just broke through to level 12 divine sense a few days ago. After saying this, Arbor saw Feng Zhangfei and the others roll their eyes at her in unison. Everyone's inner thoughts were probably, fuck, why didn't you say earlier that you broke through? The peony fairy burst into laughter and said, don't worry about it. Truly hilarious as hell. A level 8 divine sense wants to attack a level 12 divine sense. You're courting death. Holy Sun Mi Yen couldn't resist laughing. I already said that Jojo is a child with good fortune. Other people's divine senses absolutely can't surpass their cultivation realm, but she's doing the opposite, ha ha ha. As if he thought it was hilarious, this Lord Holy Sun actually amused himself as he spoke. Everyone, Lord Holy Sun really hit the nail on the head. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's mouth twitched. Jojo, did you break through to level 12 not long ago? What was your previous score? Level 10. Arbor looked at him strangely. Is there a problem? You don't feel uncomfortable? What's wrong? Arbor didn't understand. Well, that's the biggest problem. Do you know that divine sense needs a consciousness pool to contain it? You're just a little god-tier master who has just broken through the 5th level, but your divine sense has already broken through the 12th level. Don't you think this is strange? That's right, that's right. Do you know how many divine senses we have? Let me tell you, an average person's divine sense would reach the peak once it reaches the 10th level. It's absolutely impossible for him to surpass my cultivation level. That's why the old man attacked you with his divine sense, because he had absolute confidence in his own divine sense. Who would have thought that I would meet a weirdo like you? Qi Xianxian and the others glanced at them speechlessly. They saw a group of Transcendence Realm cultivators surrounding the little Stoic and giving her new knowledge one after another. Isn't there a level 15 divine sense? Arbor asked in confusion. Everyone chuckled at her, but their laughter was all very strange. The little Stoic pulled out her hand and smacked Feng Zhangfei, who was the closest to her, on the head. Why are you being so eccentric? Speak properly. The group of Transcendence Realm cultivators, we can't be bothered to speak to you. Chapter 46-52. What's with your expressions? The little Stoic looked around and harumphed. The peony fairy giggled and walked up to hold the little Stoic's arm. Jojo, they're right. Normally, level 10 divine senses are considered the peak. Divine senses can reach a radius of 500 kilometers. It's not a boast to say that you can kill a person from 500 kilometers away. The peony fairy suddenly looked at the little Stoic. What about Jojo? Where can your divine senses reach? 1,500 kilometers. Vast and boundless. Sir Jojo thought for a moment and spread out his hands. It doesn't feel boundless. If I settle down now, I can sense the villages beyond the river of forgetfulness. Fuck, then wasn't it 8,000 nautical miles? Everyone, alright, go play on the side. The peony fairy brusquely flung away Jojo's hand and turned to walk towards Holy Sun Mi Yen. Transcendent Realm cultivators, we don't want to talk to you right now. Go away. Qi Xianxian couldn't resist chuckling. She finally understood what was going on now. Just now, a group of Transcendent Realm cultivators explained to Sir Jojo the range of divine senses. As a result, Jojo made a bunch of Transcendent Realm cultivators depressed. Arbor blinked and quickly turned to look in Duan Yu's direction. In this short period of time, that old man Wang Xian had already been roasted to his last breath by Duan Yu's demonic emperor fire and had almost fainted on the ground. That flame was very miraculous. After burning for so long, it didn't roast the old man beyond recognition. But through that silver-white flame helmet, the old man's expression was so distorted that it was almost unbearable to look at. Arbor ran over briskly and asked curiously, Duan Yu, your flame can actually roast his conscience? It was too miraculous. If she didn't recognize wrongly, Duan Yu's demonic emperor fire had already charged into Wang Xian's conscience and was wantonly wreaking havoc inside. You can also launch a mental attack at him. Duan Yu tugged at her and pulled her a few steps away. Don't get too close, the stench is unbearable. Arbor nodded, and his eyes lit up. Adhering to the spirit of asking if he didn't understand, the little guy asked, how do I attack him mentally? Is that so? Arbor gestured the direction of the power transmission with 2 fingers. Duan Yu's mouth twitched, and he coughed lightly as he explained, generally speaking, after entering the transcendent realm, one would naturally use their divine conscience to envelop and control the 5 spirits to attack the other party's conscience. The 5 spirits are formless and formless, and the consciousness is also something without a physical form. When the two are combined, a person with a high level of consciousness can launch an attack at a person with a lower level of consciousness. If the other party is unprepared, his consciousness can be torn apart on the spot. That was why he was so angry just now. The old man harbored extreme malice toward Jojo. As soon as they met, he used his divine conscience to control the 5 spirits and launched a fierce attack on Jojo's conscience, wanting to defeat him in one blow. If the old man succeeded in one blow, Jojo's consciousness might be muddled for several months in the best-case scenario. In the worst-case scenario, he might directly become an idiot or a cripple, or his conscience would be completely torn apart. It would be impossible for him to reassemble it in the future. This old man was so vicious that he had no choice but to strike back and severely injure him. Use your divine conscience to envelop the 5 spirits, Sir Jojo muttered subconsciously, and his eyes suddenly focused. He used his divine conscience to envelop a ball of lush green holy wood spirit and pointed at the old man's glabella, tapping lightly in the air. For more. Chapter 46-53. Immediately after, Wang Xian let out a heart-wrenching scream of terror. Then, his entire body fell backwards and landed on the ground with a thud. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, momentarily baffled. The little stoic used a mental attack on her. It should be. Otherwise, why would this elder Wang be in this state? Hey, you guys! Why are you hiding over there? Send someone who can speak. Qi Xianxian unhappily shouted at the youths who were hiding behind the spirit artifact cabins. A series of rustling noises were heard. It should be that group of youths pushing and shoving each other for a while. Finally, after a while, a young man who looked to be around 27 or 28 years old finally walked out from behind the spirit tool cabins while trembling with fear. He immediately saw Elder Wang, who was rolling on the ground and frothing at the mouth. It felt like his heart was struck by something, and he immediately panicked as if he had lost his backbone. We aren't. No, we aren't. This fellow stuttered, his eyes continuously glancing at Elder Wang, who was rolling on the ground. When he noticed the icy expressions of the little stoic and the others, his heart thumped harder, and he couldn't even speak coherently. Mata interrupted him impatiently. Is there anyone who can speak in a complete sentence? A few heads poked out from behind the spirit tool cabins and shoved each other. Finally, a short-haired young girl was pushed out. That young girl looked rather quick-witted. Although she was trembling all over like that youth, she could at least speak clearly. Who are you people? Why did you severely injure me, an elder of our Wangchuan duo clan? Her trembling gaze swept over everyone's faces. Suddenly, her eyes lit up as if she had seen a brother she hadn't seen in 800 years. She hastily waved in Long Shangyun's direction. Sister Shangyun. Brother Long Yun, it's you people. Long Huan sighed and glanced at Long Shangyun, who remained silent. The other party had already greeted them so fervently. Since his younger sister wasn't willing to speak, then he could only step forward. Miss Duo, how are you? Long Huan replied stiffly. They were quite familiar with this Miss Duo. Usually, during the holidays, when relatives visited each other, they would often have a meal together. Miss Duo had already opened her mouth to greet them, so it would be impolite to pretend that they didn't see her. Miss Duo was an easygoing person. When she saw Long Huan talking to her, she quickly ran over to him. Brother Long Huan, what happened just now? Why are you with these people? Miss Duo timidly glanced at Arbor and the others. She nodded at Long Huan fawningly and smiled reservedly. Brother Long Huan, I'm sorry. Can you explain it to us? Long Huan sighed. He was truly unwilling to meddle in the various disputes between the duo clan of Wang Chuan and the Little Stoic. Judging from the current situation, the Forgotten River duo clan seemed to be rushing down the path of death. The wise move was to stay away from these people who were courting death, but now, the young miss of the Wang Chuan duo clan clung to him as if he was her savior. He couldn't bring himself to shake her off coldly. On the side, Long Shangyun swept Miss Duo a glance. How could you not know what happened? Just now, that elder Wang of your clan attacked others as soon as they met. Chapter 46-54. Now that you've suffered a loss and can't get out of the situation, you want to drag my brother down with you. Miss Duo, who do you think my brother is? My brother isn't a sucker who can be ordered around by you. You can forget about it. After Long Shangyun reprimanded her brother, she pulled him back a step, planning to stay far away from Miss Duo. Their relationship with the Wangchuan duo clan was just a so-so, so there was no need for them to stand up for this matter. Why did they have to offend that vengeful little stoic? It wasn't like they had nothing better to do. Long Huan couldn't help but chuckle bitterly. His younger sister seemed to be a lot more sensible now. The fundamental reason was that they were scared of being tricked by the little stoic. The siblings had already figured out a routine by now. The best way to get along with the little stoic was to mind their own business. If you didn't offend her, she wouldn't bother to waste words with you for 8 to 10 years. If you bullied her, she would pay you back tenfold. She would drag you to her grandma's house and make you bleed. That was how it was. In summary, everything could be discussed if you didn't provoke her. If you provoked her, it was like poking a hornet's nest. She would immediately teach you a lesson. Sister Shan-yun. Miss Duo called out aggrievedly and looked expectantly at Long Huan. Brother Long Huan, it was just a misunderstanding earlier. We also didn't know why Elder suddenly attacked that girl. Now, since Elder has also been taught a lesson, then let's drop this matter for the time being, alright? Long Huan reflexively turned his head and glanced at the little stoic. He then coughed lightly and said, "Apologies. If you want to apologize, you better find the right person. I can't decide on this matter. The person you've offended now is the crown princess of the divine province, Fierce Star Little Demon. If you want to apologize, you should apologize to the person in question, right?" Miss Duo's eyes abruptly widened, as if she didn't dare to believe that Long Huan and his sister wouldn't help them. "We only rushed here because we received a message from the Fireworm Squad's captain, Sir Wucheng, and learned that Little Ming was captured. Our original intention was only to save him and didn't have any other intentions." Miss Duo's words caused Long Shan-yun to purse her lips disapprovingly. Long Shan-yun thought in her heart that his words were truly fake. If he really wanted to deal with this matter, he wouldn't have made such a big fuss in the first place. Moreover, he wouldn't launch a mental attack on the little stoic as soon as they met. How did they look like they were here to have a peaceful talk? They wanted to capture a core member first and then exchange him for Duo Shanming, right? At this time, the old man had slowly calmed down, but he had completely fainted. Miss Duo was extremely flustered on the inside, but she still forced herself to maintain a bit of a noble family's young miss on the surface. She took a deep breath and finally turned to look at the little stoic. "This miss. Our Wang Chuan Duo clan has also heard about what happened before. Indeed, it was my brother's arrogance that offended everyone. However, he should have received the punishment he deserved by now. Could you please be magnanimous and let go of my brother?" Arbor thought it was a little funny. In her eyes, these people were worse than dogs begging for mercy by the roadside. Each and every one of them was like an idiot. Their brain circuits were completely different from normal people. If they could beat her, they obviously wouldn't have this kind of attitude right now. It was precisely because they couldn't beat her and couldn't gain any advantage from her that they softened their attitudes and spoke very hilariously. On what basis did they want to take Arbor down a notch as soon as they met? Chapter 46-55. Why would they immediately put on a pitiful expression and beg for forgiveness when they couldn't beat Arbor? It was as if the moment the other party said, "Please forgive me," she would immediately be magnanimous and forgive them. Was there something wrong with their brains? Was this the attitude they should have when negotiating? It was obvious that they didn't think much of her from the start. It was only now that they realized that the enemy's strength seemed to be far beyond their imagination, so they had no choice but to soften their attitude. Even so, their begging attitude still carried a sense of superiority, as if they had no choice but to beg her and felt wronged. "If you don't agree to let them go after we beg you and don't agree to reconcile with us, then you're going too far. A bunch of idiots with damaged heads. Seize their resources and throw them into the sea. Let them fend for themselves." Arbor coldly snorted and gave an order. "What about this flying spirit artifact?" Qi Xian pointed at the flying spirit artifact on the beach. "Smash it." It was a pile of scrap metal. She felt that it was embarrassing to give it away. "All right." Little Fatty cheered, carrying his double-headed hammer and rushing forward. It felt so good to smash the spirit artifact cabin. Bang 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 sounds rang out as the hammer smashed down. The 100 or so youths who had been hiding behind the spirit artifact cabin hurriedly went forward to stop them. What are you doing? Scram! Little Fatty smashed his hammer at the feet of one of the youths. Hide in your shells in the future. It's best if you don't come out and cause trouble. Otherwise, I'll beat you up every time I see you. They were still youths full of vigor after all. How could they endure such humiliation? The group of youths from the Forget River Duo clan immediately clamored and took out weapons from their consciousness. They angrily said, we're not afraid of you. You dare to attack us. My grandfather won't let you off. The little fatty chuckled and smashed his hammer on the back of the clamoring young man, causing him to fall onto the spirit artifact cabin and let out a shrill cry. You guys are so funny. Jiang Shaoxin shook his head speechlessly and walked to the little fatty's side. You can't win, so you called Dad and Grandpa here? He silently took out a divine artifact from his conscious and said with an indifferent expression, do you want to take the initiative to hand over your resources? Or should we beat you half to death before searching your inner worlds? Mata chuckled and shook her head with her arms crossed. You guys are really a bunch of kids who haven't weaned yet. Why don't you send a message home first? If you call me Grandpa, call me Grandpa. If you call me Daddy, call me Daddy. If you call me Mom, call me Grandma, call you Aunt or Auntie, anything will do. Just come. Mata laughed maniacally. Let's see. How many ants does your Wangchuan Duo clan have that you can gather? The corner of Qi Xuanxuan's mouth twitched, and she teased, don't forget to call your master along. Everyone was speechless. The group of youths from the Wangchuan Duo clan were probably about to explode from the incitement of their little companions from the Sikong Planet battle team. The 27 or 28-year-old youth who was the first to be pushed out to negotiate stammered with trembling lips, You, don't go too far. Who's bullying you? Mata smiled at him. Aren't we giving you a chance to go home and call your grandpa and grandma? Chapter 46-56. You're already so considerate. What else do you want? The Sikong Star battle team members all pulled out their divine weapons in tacit agreement and beamed at the Wangchuan Duo clan youths who were cowering like quails. Attack! Our dear Qi Xianxian commanded. Ma Shichen and the others couldn't resist twitching their mouths. The 7 hilarious fellows from the Sikong Star battle team rushed up and gave those unlucky fellows from the Wangchuan Duo clan a violent beating. Xiao Mu hastily summoned a washboard that was that long and that wide from her conscious Duan Yu's eyelids twitched uncontrollably. They watched as the little stoic swung her washboard and charged toward the Sikong Star squad with her head covered. She even shouted righteously, shocking everyone. The Sikong Star battle team will definitely win. The Sikong Star battle team members reflexively followed up with Jojo's words. Jojo will definitely win. You're not fighting alone. Everyone, did they freaking want to laugh themselves to death by answering this slogan? Pfft, the peony fairy guffawed. Damn, are Jojo and the others trying to make me laugh myself to death? Stop joking around. Look at these frivolous little faces. Definitely win, my ass. Wasn't it just finding an excuse to beat up the Duo clan? Long Shangyun watched speechlessly for a long while. Brother, how about we go back and rest first? That's fine too. This scene made people panic. In less than 15 minutes, the Duo clan members all threw down their weapons and surrendered. They originally wanted to scurry away like rats but were beaten to the ground. It wasn't that there was a huge difference in strength. Most importantly, every member of the Sikong Star battle team had a divine weapon above level 10. The washboard in Jojo's hand was also a divine weapon. Long Shangyun really had to hand it to the people around her. Arbor's temper wasn't particularly good to begin with. Not to mention the stoic face, but he was also two-faced and liked to trick people. He was best at tricking his enemies to death. Now that she was surrounded by artificers, what kind of toys did they make to tease her? The members of the Duo clan really made one's heart ache. Looking at them reminded him of the countless times he and his sister had suffered at the hands of Arbor. Blue was extremely thin. Forget it, what the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over. Xiao Xiao, your washboard seems to be even more powerful than before. Ma Ta looked back at Xiao Mu in the midst of his busy work. I asked Miguang to improve it previously, and it's not bad. Now, the washboard was already a divine artifact. Previously, when the ape offered it as an offering, it was only a spirit artifact. Speaking of which, he didn't know which cultivator this washboard belonged to. The Yuan really took in all sorts of things. In the Xuanji mystic realm, he was really a scavenger. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. The Seekong Star battle team plundered everything from the inner worlds of those unlucky fellows, sealed everyone's spiritual senses, and drove them all out of the snowy island. Sir Jojo's mood only improved when he saw them drifting further and further away on the sea, each holding a piece of wreckage of a flying spirit artifact. As long as they dared to cause trouble, Sir Jojo dared to scam them until they lost everything. Build a sign in front of the snowy island. Arbor snorted and said, in the future, this island will belong to Jojo. Anyone who passes by and doesn't look pleasing to the eye will have to pay. Everyone couldn't help but burst into laughter. Uncle Master was right. In the future, she would be the owner of this island. Humph. The 8th night watch ended. Chapter 46-57. After issuing a series of orders, the island master, who was immediately appointed, tossed everything to someone else and became a hands-off boss as usual. On the other side, Duan Yu dragged that old man, Wang Xian, to Arbor and tossed him aside. At this time, Wang Xian was unconscious and crashed to the ground with a bang. His eyes, ears, mouth, and nose were all crooked. He might still be 30% clear-headed, but he couldn't utter a single word. This guy simply didn't expect that things would turn out contrary to his wishes when he came to negotiate in high spirits. Not only did he fail to save little young Sir Duo Shanming, but he also kicked a stiff iron plate and took a big tumble. The old man seriously couldn't figure out why the mental attack command he issued at the beginning of their encounter seemed to have hit a natural barrier and bounced back to injure him. No matter what, the old man couldn't have imagined that Arbor, a level 5 minor divine cultivator, would possess a level 12 divine conscious. In terms of divine conscious, the little stoic crushed the old man. There was no way to refute this. Duan Yu unceremoniously kicked the old man several times, causing him to flip over and wake up with a series of coughs. Are transcendent god realm cultivators this strong? His conscience was burned for so long by Duan Yu's demonic emperor fire, but he actually didn't die completely. He can still wake up faintly after being kicked a few times. The little stoic pondered in her mind, but she didn't say anything. However, her eyes were filled with curiosity as she stared at him. I gave him a pill just now. That was why the old man was barely hanging on to half his life. Duan Yu turned to look at her. Do you have anything to ask? If not, he would deal with this old man. The old man harbored resentment toward them and absolutely couldn't leave him alive. I do. Arbor's pitch-black eyes swiveled, and she stepped forward to ask, how did you feel just now? The old man looked up and glared at her with resentment. It was only then that Arbor clearly saw that the old man's face had already been burned by the demonic emperor fire to the point that his original appearance couldn't be seen. His face was fine earlier. Why did it suddenly become like it was roasted? Arbor looked at the old man in confusion. Duan Yu gave him a heavy kick and coldly said, answer the question. His handsome eyes stared coldly at the old man, as if he was looking at a dead man. Answer me honestly, and I'll send you on your way. Otherwise, I will scatter your soul and extract the power of the 5 spirits. The man's cold and emotionless voice made the old man shudder uncontrollably. Spare me, spare me. The old man didn't want to be so cowardly. As he begged for mercy, he felt his face burning. But in the current situation, the situation was stronger than the person. He had lived for so long and had already broken through to his current realm, so he really didn't want to die in such a cowardly manner. At this time, Old Man Wang was sincerely regretting it. If he had known that he would encounter such a fierce person on this trip, he would not have promised the Duo family that he would do his best to bring their young master back. He regretted it, really regretted it. Now, not only did he fail to save her, he even lost his life. Old man. I asked you a question. Answer. Arbor glanced at him curiously. This old man's twisted expression was quite rich, so his mental state should be filled with complicated emotions right now. You know. Duan Yu coldly glanced at Wang Xian. Chapter 46-58. You're dead for sure. The young man's eyes only revealed this meaning. The old man instantly deflated like a deflated balloon. Just now, my conscience was attacked by a surge of wood spirit energy, and this wood spirit energy was suppressing my conscience. When the old man said this, he seemed to have suddenly understood something, and his old eyes abruptly widened. He couldn't resist exclaiming, You. So it's your divine conscience is actually higher than mine. How was this possible? Just now, the wood spirit power that was wrapped in the consciousness suddenly penetrated into my consciousness. It's your doing. This was simply unimaginable. How was this possible? Wasn't this little girl before him just a level 5 minor divine cultivator? How could her divine conscience be higher than his cultivation realm? Not only was her cultivation realm higher, but it was also much higher misconception. He must have misunderstood. The old man felt aggrieved and shook his head sullenly. Impossible. Arbor couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him anymore. She only needed to know the answer. In other words, when she used her divine conscience to envelop the wood spirit energy, carry out mental suppression, and infiltrate the conscious, it was effective. She succeeded once again. Duan Yu. Arbor turned to look at Duan Yu in high spirits. I succeeded just now. Duan Yu chuckled. Of course you succeeded. That old man even fainted from your attack just now. Jojo is really smart, Duan Yu praised with a smile. He only casually told her to use her divine conscience to envelop the 5 spirits and carry out a mental attack. In the end, this little fellow tried it herself and succeeded on her first try. The peony fairy and the others silently ignored this little rascal. This fellow's talent was a bit of a pain in the ass. Duan Yu raised his hand and heavily struck the old man's head with his palm. Before the old man could successfully beg for mercy again, he was engulfed by the surging Devil Emperor's fire. Arbor glanced at it and discovered that this silvery white flame was much more turbulent than the one he used just now. This time, it completely enveloped the old man, burning him to the point that it looked extremely vicious. In just a short few seconds, the old man fell down weakly. The Devil Emperor's fire burned this person to ashes, including his skin and bones. After watching the old man turn into ashes, Duan Yu's icy eyes finally shifted slightly. One must know that at the moment when the old man's spiritual consciousness rushed towards Jojo's spiritual attack, he was so nervous that he almost stopped breathing. That feeling of experiencing life and death was not good at all. Arbor turned to look at Duan Yu. Duan Yu? I'm fine. The little crown princess nodded and suddenly patted his head. I'm fine, don't be afraid. I will protect you. After that, the little fellow turned around and waved at the crowd. He urged, have you built the sign at the door? He had to clearly write down the rules. Those who don't follow the standard will have to pay when they pass by my island. Duan Yu had a smile on his lips as he watched the little stoic's energetic figure dashing away. He muttered to himself in his heart, I will also protect you. Jojo, I wish you good health and good fortune, save us. Save us, is there anyone who can come save us? On the surface of the sea, hundreds of young men and women hugged the wreckage of the spirit artifact cabins as they wailed and wailed on the vast water. Miss Duo, there seems to be someone ahead. Chapter 46-59. It's a ship, it's really a ship. Someone's eyes suddenly lit up as he shouted. Hugging the wreckage of the spirit artifact cabin, he raised his hand as he floated and waved vigorously in the direction of the ship while shouting, "Friends on the ship, can you come and save us? We are members of the Duo clan of Wangchuan. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Young master, there are so many people floating on the sea." Ling Gu couldn't help but be speechless. She ran to the railing of the ship and looked at the young men and women tossing about in the sea. Young master, quickly come and take a look. Wow, there are at least 100 people. What are they doing in the sea? A plain-colored figure floated to Ling Ji's side and glanced at her. Sure enough, there were many young men and women floating in the sea, each of them lying on a broken piece of debris with drooping heads. She couldn't tell what material the debris was made of, but it seemed to have good buoyancy in the sea and was able to support them as they floated over. Fifth young master, eldest young master invites you over to drink wine and enjoy the dance. A young man who looked like a disciple walked over with a smile and bowed to the zither cultivator. Fifth young master Qin turned around and glanced at him. He restrained his gaze and turned back to say, "Go get these people and fish out the people in the sea first." That disciple was slightly startled and walked to Ling Ji's side. He looked down and saw many people in the sea waving in their direction. "Heh! Are you in such a good mood?" Seeing that the weather was getting colder by the day, he didn't expect these people to be so leisurely, soaking in the sea when they had nothing to do. "Yes, young master, this subordinate will have people come over right away and fish them all up." Not long after, this person indeed called people over and fished out all the men and women soaking in the sea onto the deck. Those people were very disheveled and looked like drowned rats. Not only were they trembling all over, but their complexions were also green and white. Fifth young master ordered people to bring blankets and distribute them to wrap around their bodies. Ling Gu muttered at the side, "Young master, you're so kind-hearted. Who knows what kind of people you're saving?" That Miss Duo quickly walked over gratefully and bowed to fifth young master amiably. "May I know this young master's esteemed name?" "We are disciples of the Forgotten River Duo clan. Many thanks to young master for lending us a helping hand. My name is Duo Shanmei. Nice to meet you." Fifth young master glanced at her indifferently and nodded. "You can contact your family and leave on your own. There's no need to inform me again." Duo Shan's beautiful smile suddenly froze on her palm-sized face. The handsome and elegant young master in front of him treated people too coldly. To be able to speak so bluntly to a great beauty like her, Duo Shanmei felt that something was wrong. She smiled awkwardly at the fifth young master. All of our spiritual senses have been sealed. His cultivation hadn't fully recovered yet. I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you for a while. Ah. You guys are too ridiculous. Ling Gu could not help but exclaim. Our young master saved you out of the kindness of his heart. With your attitude, I'm afraid you're going to rely on him. You can't be thinking of freeloading here, right? Duo Shanmei's face suddenly seemed a little stiff. Young master, it's not what you think, Duo Shanmei stuttered and explained. We. Chapter 46-60. Alright, you don't have to explain. Ling Gu interrupted Duo Shanmei with a look of disdain. An explanation is a cover-up. Looking at your guilty expressions, I know that you have no money in your pockets and can't afford food and lodging at all. Duo Shanmei bit her thin lips and looked pitifully in the direction of the fifth young master. However, she saw the fifth young master turn his head and look behind him. Her line of sight followed him. A few guards escorted a tall and handsome young master out of the cabin. "Fifth brother, what are you doing there?" Eldest young master Qin looked over with a grin. When his gaze met Duo Shanmei's group, he couldn't help but be slightly taken aback. "These are eldest brother." The fifth young master hurriedly walked over and stood beside his eldest brother, whispering a few words. So many people were fished out from the sea. It felt like there was a story behind this group of people. Eldest young master was taken aback again. He looked at Duo Shanmei with a slight smile and asked gently and amiably, "Miss, there are so many of you. How did you all fall into the water together?" Duo Shanmei instantly felt that this young master in front of her seemed to be even more beautiful than the fifth young master with a cold personality and an indifferent expression. It was mainly because this smiling eldest young master in front of her had a pair of starry eyes that were too dazzling. When he gazed at her with a smile and a focused expression, Duo Shanmei always felt that his eyes would drag her into an unknown place. This immortal-like young master was simply too good-looking. Which family's young master was he? Seeing that Duo Shanmei didn't answer, the young man from the Duo clan hurriedly interjected, "Young masters, I'm truly sorry. We didn't mean to disturb you. It's really, speaking of which, we've made a fool of ourselves in front of you. It's really us Wangchuan Duo clan disciples who are too unlucky. We actually encountered such an unreasonable expressionless person. This expressionless girl attacked us without even speaking 3 sentences. She didn't reason with you at all. Right. She even sent people to throw us into the sea and seal our spirit senses and cultivation." The fifth young master and eldest young master exchanged glances. At the side, Ling Gu couldn't help but burst into laughter. "In that case, you really don't have money. Right now, your inner worlds must be completely empty. Someone must have ransacked your inner worlds." The people from the Duo clan of Wangchuan looked at each other in embarrassment. Although they did not understand how Ling Gu knew that they had been robbed, the truth was indeed so. "Young masters, I'm really sorry." Duo Shanmei came back to her senses and quickly tried to smooth things over with a smile. Although right now, we are indeed penniless." Duo Shanmei bit her lips and said with grievance, "But as long as we can contact our families, we will definitely pay for all the food and lodging expenses for these days. Please take us in for a few days." Duo Shanmei thought she would show her most beautiful smile, but unexpectedly, as soon as she finished speaking, the originally smiling eldest young Sir Qin turned his head mercilessly and shouted at the servants, "Come, throw them all out." Everyone was speechless. "Eldest young master, you are really too willful." It was not easy for the servants to fish them out, but now they were going to throw them back down again with just a few words. Duo Shanmei and the others instantly panicked and cried out helplessly, "Why? Throw them down. Don't talk nonsense." Eldest young Sir waved his hand and shouted in annoyance. Chapter 46-61. Where did all the wise and wise come from? Eldest young Sir Qin waved his hand willfully. "Why are you so talkative? Throw them away." The fifth young Sir glanced at his eldest brother speechlessly. He heard his eldest brother mutter, "What if the little stoic finds out that this young Sir saved the people she threw away? Wouldn't that be looking for trouble?" "Fifth young Sir, eldest brother, just how cowardly are you? Wait." Duo Shanmei shouted in exasperation, "Can you let me say a few words?" Duo Shanmei was both anxious and angry when she saw several servants pouncing over aggressively and twisting her arms. She shouted repeatedly, "This young Sir, even if you're throwing us overboard, you should have a reason. We're from the Wangchuan Duo clan." "You are." Duo Shanmei's small face instantly contorted. Earlier, she had thought that this eldest young Sir was dissolute, elegant, and even handsome. Looking at him now, his appearance was simply repulsive. She was probably blind to think that this person's aura was extraordinary. Look at what he was doing. Was this something a human could do? Duo Shanmei and company were perplexed after much thought. Why did they have to be thrown into the sea the next second after being rescued onto the ship? No, wait, no. Duo Shanmei turned to look in fifth young sir's direction. Young sir, please plead for mercy on our behalf. What kind of joke was this? Their spiritual senses and cultivation had yet to recover, so they couldn't contact the Duo clan members at all. If they were to drift on the sea for another 7 days and 8 nights, they would probably rot from the soaking. Previously, they were lucky and didn't encounter any danger after drifting for most of the night. If they were thrown into the sea again this time, what would they do if they encountered things like piranhas? Young sir. That young disciple from before appeared at eldest young Sir Qin's side at this moment and silently observed Duo Shanmei and company. Subsequently, he leaned forward and whispered into eldest young Sir Qin's ear. Eldest young Sir Qin's gaze swept over Duo Shanmei and company, and he said aloofly, "No need. We're here for a vacation, so there's no need to stir up trouble." The disciple bowed in salute. Yes. Fifth brother, let's go. Eldest young Sir Qin beckoned fifth young Sir Qin and turned to walk into the cabin. His attitude made it clear that he wanted his subordinates to kick Duo Shanmei and her party off the boat. He would not care about anything else. The fifth young master turned his head and glanced at them hesitantly. In the end, he did not say anything. Duo Shanmei and the other nobles of the Duo family had never suffered such humiliation before. They were so angry that their faces turned red and their necks bulged. They cursed and swore at the servants who were pushing them. Shouting and cursing could not change their tragic fate. With the sound of splashing water, Duo Shanmei and the others were unceremoniously thrown into the sea. When she felt the salty seawater wrap around her again, Duo Shanmei was about to go mad. "Miss, who are these people? I've never seen them in the river of forgetfulness. What should we do? How do I contact my family?" Duo Shanmei was confused by the series of questions. She rebuked angrily, "How would I know if you're asking me? This place was at least 500 nautical miles away from the river of forgetfulness. The river of forgetfulness was under the deep sea. Based on their current situation where they had neither spiritual awareness nor cultivation, it was impossible for them to return home on their own. Furthermore, Chapter 46-62. All the water-repelling pearls in their inner worlds had been plundered by the bandits. They didn't even leave them a set of clothes to change into. What those deranged bandits had done was simply intolerable. Now, apart from the clothes they were wearing, all of their valuables had been taken away, except for the clothes they were wearing. There was no food, no medicinal pills, nothing at all. It was such a miserable situation. Duo Shanmei hit the water angrily. "Be careful, there's something under the water." While they were talking, the screams of a few Duo clan disciples came from not far away. "A school of corpse fish. Is it a school of corpse fish coming?" A disciple of the Duo clan screamed in panic. "Don't talk nonsense, there's no school of corpse fish. Look carefully, don't get entangled by seaweed. You're scaring yourself. Don't you think you're unlucky enough? Do you have to blindly come up with something for me to feel at ease?" Duo Shanmei shouted angrily, her face twisted. They had drifted for an entire night and hadn't encountered any school of corpse fish. Did this mean that there wasn't much danger in these waters? "Quick, come out, quick." The stairway talisman flashed and several people fell from the light circle in the air, rolling and crawling. Zhao Yi and Gu Yishuan rushed forward to support Mu Xiaoxue, who almost fell to the ground. The two guards standing in front of the main gate of the City of Shadows were shocked and they saw this. They hurried forward and called out, "Senior Brother Zhao. Senior Brother Gu. Miss. What's wrong with you? Quick, look around and see if anyone's coming." Gu Yishuan yelled at the guard, "Hurry up, don't just stand there. Check the surroundings. If you see anyone suspicious, kill them. Zhao Yi glanced at him in disdain and mocked, I think you're scared out of your wits. The stairway talisman can teleport you up to a distance of 2,000 miles. Junior sister used a total of 10 stairway talismans and a teleportation talisman array. Who do you think can travel 10,000 miles in a day and chase after us? Gu Yixuan was so embarrassed that she didn't know what to say. Indeed, he was overly cautious and worried. According to normal speed, it was impossible for even someone who had attained the immortal Exalt realm to travel 5,000 kilometers in a single day. A transcendent god's divine sense could at most cover 1,000 miles. Gu Yixuan heaved a sigh of relief and turned around to glare at Zhao Yi. Although what Zhao Yi said was the truth, Gu Yixuan was not happy with his high and mighty and insufferably arrogant tone. Mu Xiaoxue was leaning against Zhao Yi's arm, gasping for breath. She sounded like she was about to cry. Senior brother Zhao, quick, help me to see my father. You have to save my mother. I can't let her fall into the hands of Arbor. Alright, junior sister, don't worry, I'll carry you to see master now. Zhao Yi's face was filled with tenderness as he hurriedly carried Mu Xiaoxue in his arms. However, a cold rebuke came from the main entrance. Men, take that bitch Mu Xiaoxue down. When Mu Xiaoxue heard this harsh and cold voice, she could not help but tremble and quickly shrank into Zhao Yi's arms. Zhao Yi's heart was filled with tenderness as he hurriedly reached out to protect his little junior sister in his arms. He coldly looked at the two disciples who had fiercely rushed in front of him. What are you doing? Chapter 46-63. Senior brother Zhao, please forgive the madam's order. Sorry for the offense. The two disciples' eyes flashed with a trace of mockery. They suddenly rushed forward and released two streams of spirit energy. One landed on Zhao Yi's arm and the other landed on Mu Xiaoxue's leg. Mu Xiaoxue screamed. Gu Yixuan hurried over to help but was suddenly surrounded by a dozen disciples who rushed out of the main entrance. Let me see who dares to help this bitch. A tall and thin woman in red walked out of the main entrance surrounded by a group of people. Her gloomy eyes were solemn and cold as she scanned the crowd. Drag him over here. Mu Xiaoxue was forcefully dragged from Zhao Yi's arms to the ground and thrown in front of the madam. Mu Xiaoxue fell to the ground with a thud. Her hands scraped the ground and left a few bloody marks. She was in so much pain that tears welled up in her eyes and she kept gasping for breath. Mu Xiaoxue, I forbade you to leave the City of Shadows and you went missing. If you have the ability, don't come back. Now that you've returned like a stray dog, who knows what kind of trouble you've caused in the city. I didn't, madam. Mu Xiaoxue burst into tears. Her eyes were brimming with tears and they fell one by one. She looked very pitiful, like a pear blossom in the rain whose fragrance had faded away. Zhao Yi and Gu Yixuan were heartbroken. They couldn't help but bite the bullet and said to the powerful madam, Madam, junior sister didn't cause any trouble. Madam, junior sister is innocent. We really didn't cause any trouble on this trip. Madam, junior sister went with us to the forgetful river Snow Ridge to find the Fecta's secret realm, ha 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 ha, the madam mocked with a malicious expression. Fecta's secret realm? So you brought Mu Xiaoxue to some secret realm to search for treasures? You brought a cripple with no cultivation to a secret realm to search for treasures? Ha 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 ha. What a joke. Mu Xiaoxue knelt in front of the madam with a humiliated expression. She bit her thin lower lip and tears fell down one by one. She was a cripple with no cultivation, but she didn't want to do it. Who wants to be bald when they have hair? Even in her dreams, she wanted to become a cultivator who could cultivate. However, Madame Mu couldn't bear to see her acting like a little white flower. Without any explanation, she slapped her face. You're crying again. Every time I can't even say 3 sentences, you'll start crying, as if the whole world has let you down. You're no different from your bitch of a mother. She's also a slut who seduces men. Madam. Zhao Yi was so angry that the veins on his forehead were throbbing. If it wasn't for his rationality telling him that the person in front of him was his master's wife, his master's first wife, he really couldn't help but rush up and beat this woman up. What? So angry that you want to hit me? Do you want to stand up for this little bitch? Zhuo Yan sneered and went forward to grab Mu Xiaoshue's hair without any pity. Mu Xiaoshue, don't think that I can't punish you just because someone is standing up for you. Get the hell back to the detention room right now. You're not allowed to see anyone for 3 months. Mistress. Zhao Yi roared. You get the hell back too. Instead of cultivating properly, you're bewitched by this little bitch all day long. That's all you're good for. Get the hell out of here. Zhuo Yan shouted coldly. What now? Chapter 46-64. You've been causing chaos in the family. What do you want? A middle-aged man with a short black beard and brocade clothes walked out of the main gate. He stared coldly at Zhuo Yan. I'm the one who asked Xue, and Zhao Yi to go to the River of Forgetfulness to inquire about the Tianji hidden land. Do you have a problem with my way of doing things? Master. Zhao Yi's face lit up when he saw the man. He turned around and bowed to the middle-aged man with a group of fellow disciples. Mu Xiaoxue, who was sitting on the ground in a very sorry state, raised her head and cried, Father. Mu Jinghong frowned and said coldly to the disciples, Why aren't you helping your junior sister up from the ground? Zhuo Yan, you'd better control yourself. Xue is also my daughter. I'm disciplining a concubine's daughter. Mu Jinghong, are you going to interfere? Zhuo Yan looked coldly at Mu Jinghong. You're really ridiculous. Zhuo Yan. Mu Jinghong glared at Zhuo Yan. She took a deep breath and tried to calm the anger in her heart. She turned to her crying daughter Mu Xiaoxue and said, Xue, your mother has been in a bad mood recently. Don't take it to heart. Alright, help Miss back. Send her to the confinement room. Zhuo Yan. Mu Jinghong glared angrily at First Madam. Don't go too far. Mu Jinghong, I'm disciplining that bitch's daughter on behalf of that bitch. If I don't discipline her properly, who knows when this bitch will give you a grandson. Look at her cheap face. She's really a bitch raised by the heavens. Who is she trying to impress by acting like a crying little white flower? She's exactly the same as her bitch mother. She only knows how to use her beauty to please men. She's bewitched all her fellow disciples and they're always chasing after her like wild dogs chasing after food. Zhuo Yan. Mu Jinghong shouted and swept her palm in Zhuo Yan's direction. Mother. A young girl quickly ran over from the crowd and supported Zhuo Yan, who was retreating a few steps. Zhuo Yan's face twisted slightly. She stared at Mu Jinghong and sneered. She nodded and said, Good, good. Very good. Mu Jinghong, you actually dared to attack me for the sake of this bitch's son. Mu Jinghong reacted as soon as he struck out. In fact, he had already withdrawn most of his power. However, the palm wind still swept towards Zhuo Yan, who was caught off guard. Zhuo Yan's shoulder was injured and blood was seeping out. She was supported by her daughter, Mu Fei Xia, and she retreated a few steps. Mu Jinghong put down her hand in embarrassment and said with an embarrassed expression, You've gone too far. Father. Mu Xiaoxue was so aggrieved that she burst into tears. She immediately knelt in front of Mu Jinghong and cried, It's Xue's fault. Just let mother lock Xue in the confinement room. Xue doesn't want to make things difficult for father. For Xue's sake, please don't quarrel with mother. You little slut, shut up. Zhuo Yan coldly and angrily rebuked, Put away your dirty thoughts of retreating in order to advance. Who do you think you can fool with this little trick? Only a few men with broken heads would be charmed by you and lose their sense of direction. Enough. Mu Jinghong shouted at Zhui Yan with a cold expression. He turned to Mu Xiaoshui and said, Shui, come in with me. Yes, father. Mu Xiaoshui wiped the tears on her cheeks and got up with her head lowered. Chapter 46-65. Zhui Yan wanted to stop Mu Xiaoshui, but was pulled away by her daughter, Mu Feixia. She could only glare hatefully at Mu Xiaoshui and leave with Mu Jinghong. Why are you pulling me? Zhui Yan said angrily. Mu Feixia sighed. Mother, don't make things difficult for Mu Xiaoshui. Zhui Yan was so angry that she poked her daughter's forehead with her finger and said in a low voice, You little girl, who am I angry for? Who does that Mu Xiaoshui think she is? An outsider's plaything actually seduced your fiancé. A few days ago, the Kong family said that they wanted to break off the engagement. Don't you know why? It's that bastard from the Kong family. He secretly has something with that slut Mu Xiaoshui. Let me tell you, that Mu Xiaoshui is really a wretch. She can seduce anyone. She's the same as that slut of a mother. Mu Feixia was very open-minded. She laughed and said, Mother, this is quite good. He was a man who could be easily seduced by other women. I, your daughter, really don't like him. Besides, isn't it better to make a fuss now? If I find out the true colors of that Kong family after we get married, who will I cry to? Zhui Yan was so angry that she laughed and poked her. You're really, still in the mood to joke. Mother, don't be angry. I'm not sad. I think it's quite good. Recently, your father has been very close with that slut through letters. They use all kinds of code words. I don't know what they're secretly planning with that woman. Zhui Yan sighed and said, I'm afraid your father has been bewitched by that slut. I don't know what wrong he will do. At that time, he'll drag us three down. Mother, don't worry. I'll always pay attention to their movements. In the study. Mu Jinghong sighed and glanced at her daughter, who had her head down and tears in the corners of her eyes. Sit down. Mu Xiaoshui rubbed the corner of her clothes and nodded, trembling. Your official mother has a bad temper. You've suffered a lot these years. Father, I don't feel wronged. Mu Xiaoshui shrank her head and sat down gently. She only sat 1/3 of the chair. Her back was straight and her sitting posture was very reserved. Mu Jinghong suddenly took out a box from his arms and handed it to Mu Xiaoshui. Shui, take a look. Mu Xiaoshui took the box and thanked him in trepidation. She opened the lid to take a look. And her eyes to take a look. You to use this scarlet silk. You to use it. You doesn't need to infuse spiritual power. Is to use it to use it. You to use it to you to it. Thank you, father. Mu Xiaoshui's eyes flashed with joy. She knew of the scarlet. It was one of the 3 great magic treasures of the City of Shadows. It could be used as both a defensive and offensive divine artifact. The disciples of the 2nd City Lord and the 3rd City Lord were all thinking about this defensive magic weapon. He did not expect that his father would actually give this treasure to him today. Now that she thought about it, the humiliation she had suffered at the mountain gate was nothing. Mu Xiaoshui was happy in her heart, but her voice was soft and gentle. I just don't know if Madam will know about this. Why do you care about her? She's been going overboard these years. Don't worry. Take this scarlet silk and don't pay attention to others. First watch, continue at night. Chapter 46-66. Thank you, father. Mu Xiaoshui couldn't hide her joy. She wrapped the scarlet silk around her wrist and bowed to Mu Jinghong. Father, what about my mother? We're already thinking of a way to save your mother. Don't worry too much. Your mother is an elite of the organization. The organization won't leave her alone. Mu Jinghong sighed and patted Mu Xiaoshua's shoulder. Even if the organization can't think of a way, Father won't leave your mother alone. Father will definitely save your mother and let our family reunite. Father. Mu Xiaoshua revealed a joyful and touched expression, tactfully expressing her admiration for her father at the right time. Mu Jinghong nodded with satisfaction. This daughter of his was just like Qinya. She was gentle, sensible, and able to see the big picture. Although it was indeed a great regret in life that she couldn't embark on the path of cultivation, this daughter of his was very outstanding in other aspects. She was a daughter worthy of his pride. Arbor walked into the karst cave and raised his hand to raise the illumination pearl. The originally pitch-black cave was covered by a ray of light, enveloping the thin figure huddled in the corner of the wall. Mu Qingya curled up here. She didn't know how long it had been. She only knew that there were a few people guarding the entrance of the karst cave and that there was something outside the cave that had been suppressing her. She knew very well that this suppression should be the suppression of the divine sense. She didn't know whether it was day or night in this cave, but she felt very hungry. She guessed that it should be about 14 to 14 hours. Give her the medicine. Arbor's cold voice sounded in Mu Qingya's ears. At this moment, Mu Qingya hoped that the girl in front of her had completely forgotten about her. She would rather stay in this illusory darkness day and night than for Xiao Mu to remember her existence at this moment. What are you doing? What are you doing? Let go of me, let go. Mu Qingya struggled to move her body and glanced at the young men in front of her in horror. These people were all elites of the Zhangzhou guards. How could Mu Qingya break free? One of them grabbed Mu Qingya's collar like a chick, while the other roughly pried open Mu Qingya's mouth. Mu Qingya's face was slightly distorted as she watched a soldier take out a bottle of medicine and pour the entire bottle of unknown black liquid into her mouth without any care for the fairer sex. Gulp, gulp, cough, cough, cough. Mu Qingya was forcefully restrained and forced to take 2 big gulps. She choked out most of it and her mouth was full of the bitter taste. You damned cough, 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 little demoness. Arbor stared coldly at Mu Qingya, who was cursing at him with a bright pearl in his hand. A Zhangzhou guard unceremoniously slapped her across the face. It doesn't matter. Let her scold you. Arbor said coldly, let her vent. Yes, being locked up in such a broken place. Anyone would curse if they were forced to consume such a medicinal liquid, wouldn't they? You. Mu Qingya choked and coughed violently as if she was going to cough her lungs out. Guess when the City of Shadows will come to save you? Mu Qingya pursed her lips and glared at Arbor. Take another guess. Can they save you? I have 36,000 elites on this island. Chapter 46-67. Guess how many people Tianyun is willing to sacrifice for you? My guess is that Tianyun will probably abandon you. What do you think, Hall Master Mu? You don't need to sow discord here. Mu Qingya shouted coldly. Heh. Let me tell you, Arbor, even if I die, you won't be able to oppose our entire Tianyun with your individual strength. My individual strength? Arbor looked at her in astonishment. Of course I'm not an individual. Do you think I'm that arrogant? If we still can't oppose Tianyun with the combined strength of the 3 continents, then we'll continue to gather more people and stronger forces. We'll continue to work hard. You. Mu Qingya glared at the little stoic in front of her. Normal people only want to live normal lives and don't want to become experimental subjects. Your inhumane actions will bring about your own destruction sooner or later. Heh, you speak so righteously, Arbor. Have you ever thought that perhaps Tianyun didn't want to oppose you in the beginning? It's you. You've been blocking other people's paths, so we had no choice but to, are you begging me for mercy? Arbor interrupted her with a sneer and looked at her mockingly. Hall Master Mu, perhaps Tianyun indeed didn't want to oppose me in the beginning. But you've been opposing me from beginning to end. Do you still remember that wandering Taoist on Sikong planet? I guess you must have forgotten. Arbor glanced sideways at Mu Qingya, who was in a sorry state with her hair sticking to her face. Madame Mu no longer had her usual elegance and nobility. Her entire body was drenched in sweat, making her appear dripping and wilting. In addition, she struggled back and forth while taking the medicine, so her hairpin was completely messed up. That Taoist Dayu obeyed your orders. He found one Rawan to harm my entire family. A tiny meridian pill is just a meridian pill. It's just gold and jade, a tiny bit of immediate benefit. They can be used by you as ants. How sorrowful it is. I can only watch as all of this unfolds, evolves, and ultimately leads to death. We are powerless to resist, unable to fight for our lives, and unable to save anyone. Because they're just ants. Mu Qingya was slightly surprised as she stared at Arbor in front of her. In a flash, Mu Qingya's eyes lit up as if she had grasped something. She dug her fingernails into her fingernails. Do you still remember Fan Xiuhe? I guess you must have forgotten again. This young man is so ruthless. He's been lurking around me for so many years, and now he's finally done as you wish. Arbor paused for a moment, then walked toward Mu Qingya with the illuminating pearl in his hand. You want to cut off my wings. You want me to have nothing. You want to take one step closer to controlling my entire life. Lock me up, just like now. You had your people lock me up in a dark, bottomless hell and torment me every day to study my inner world and my mind. You are curious, aren't you? Then let me clear your doubts now. Go away. Go away. Mu Qingya felt that there was something wrong with the young lady in front of her. She only wanted to get as far away from this person as possible. She didn't want to hear anything or see anything. However, it was not up to her. Arbor lifted Mu Qingya up with one hand and dragged her into the depths of the cave. Chapter 46-68. Let go right now. Arbor, you lunatic, what do you want to do? Let go. Let go. Mu Qingya struggled and screamed as Arbor dragged her by the hair. When Duan Yu and He-Chen entered quickly, they happened to hear Mu Qingya's piercing screams. Looking around, their gazes landed on the Zhangzhou guards who were looking at each other in dismay. Leave first, Duan Yu ordered indifferently. Yes. After the Zhangzhou guards left, the two hurriedly chased into the depths of the cave. Why are you screaming so loudly? Who do you think will come to save you in this world? Don't you think it's a waste of air for trash like you to live in this world? Arbor threw Mu Qingya against the opposite wall. Mu Qingya was flung up, and her forehead hit the stone wall hard. With a trembling hand, she touched the sticky blood on her forehead, trembling in pain and fear. You lunatic. You unreasonable lunatic. You're the lunatic. A green vine whip shot out of Arbor's hand and lashed Mu Qingya's back heavily. Ah! Mu Qingya threw herself against the stone wall again, her entire body inexplicably trembling. You schemed for so many years for that 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl. You schemed against a lonely and helpless child for her entire life. You've succeeded. You've turned her into a cripple just like you. You're so awesome. She's in your hands, struggling on her deathbed without any room for resistance. She doesn't even know who you are. Why did you treat her like this? The 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl. Is it that important? Arbor lashed Mu Qingya's left leg heavily with his vine whip. In return, Mu Qingya let out an extremely painful howl and curled up like a shrimp. Arbor waved his hand, and a gorgeous light appeared behind her. As the lights and shadows flickered, the prosperous scenes of Paradise Planet, Fish Orchid Planet, Shaji Planet, Forest Planet, and the 4 auxiliary star regions flowed in the halos one after another, spreading out layer upon layer of scrolls. Did you see that? Did you see that? Arbor grabbed Wuxia's head, grabbed her long hair, and pushed her a few times. So what if you have an inner world? So what if you have a conscious? I have an entire star field. Star domain. The world inside is vast and boundless. It's as if it's sitting on the 3 continents. My Dantian is a vast and boundless starfield. Do you know now? That 500 cubic meters of inner world. What's worth your research? Wuxia's eyes widened in shock. He stared at the small world with flowing light and shadows, his eyes flashing with a crazy luster. She was going crazy. She was going completely crazy. This was Arbor's ultimate secret. Her secret was not the 10,000-year mermaid pearl, nor was it her inner world that was several hundred times larger than an ordinary person's 3 to 5 cubic meters. Instead, the entire star field belonged to her. Her Dantian was connected to the entire star field. Wuxia's breathing quickened. She was in so much pain and despair that she wanted to smash the ground. And at this very moment, she seemed to hear Xiao Mu's laughter next to her ear. Her crisp laughter gradually turned into an extremely arrogant laughter. Is it pain? Is it despair? Do you know what you missed? Ha 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 ha. Wuxia. You missed me. You missed me. Chapter 46-69. You schemed your entire life, but you didn't get anything in the end. Arbor shoved her a few more times, shaking her body. Don't you think you're the biggest joke in the world? What's wrong with you? Why don't you dare to look at me? Look at me. The 10,000-year-old shark pearl you want is here. Look at me. Arbor took out a lustrous jade-white pearl and held it in his palm, coldly gazing at Wuxia, whose expression was contorted in pain. Do you see it clearly? Arbor grabbed her disheveled long hair and pushed the 10,000-year-old shark pearl in front of Wuxia. This is the 10,000-year-old shark pearl. Do you want it? I'll give it to you. Take it, take it. Arbor pushed the 10,000-year-old shark pearl toward Wuxia's face. Wuxia's eyes throbbed with a crazed glint. She suddenly shouted angrily and pounced over like a fierce tiger, tightly gripping Arbor's hands. Xiao Mu laughed out loud, but her eyes were extremely cold as she expressionlessly looked at her like this. Is the 10,000-year-old shark pearl really useful to you? Do you think the 10,000-year-old shark pearl is some kind of miraculous 1,000-year-old elixir that you can step onto the path of cultivation after swallowing it? Idiot. Let me tell you the truth. Your body is a trash physique that's hard to come by in 1,000 years. No, you're lying, you're lying, you're lying. Wuxia gripped Xiao Mu's hands tightly and refused to let go. She held them tightly like this, as if she could grasp the 10,000-year-old stone inside and change her own fate. Why would I lie? I can tell with a glance that you have a trash physique. You want to condense mystic meridians. That's impossible. Others might have a glimmer of hope. Through recuperation and taking medicine, they might be able to step onto the path of cultivation in their lifetime. But you can't. Your body is a trash that's hard to come by in 1,000 years. Arbor. Wuxia shrieked, wanting to cover her mouth with her hands. She didn't want to listen to her speak anymore. This little stoic's words were too painful and heart-wrenching for her. Every word seemed to stab into her heart, causing her unbearable pain. Arbor abruptly raised his little hand and smashed the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl onto Wuxia. Is the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl useful to you? Take a look and see if it's useful to you. You idiot. Arbor kicked Wuxia to the corner. Wuxia's eyes were fixed on the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl that was rolling on the ground. She crawled over and tried to press it with her trembling hands. However, at that moment, the 10,000-year mermaid pearl suddenly flew up and landed in front of Arbor. As if it was throwing a tantrum, it smashed heavily onto her little head. Arbor stretched out his hand to block it. After being hit by it twice, he calmed down slightly. Arbor reached out and grabbed the pearl that kept jumping out and smashing its little head, then silently swallowed it. On the other side, Mu Qingya watched this scene in a trance. She sat paralyzed on the ground, unable to make a sound for a long time. Right now, she was surrounded by immense sorrow. Her mind was filled with clamorous noises that rose and fell one after another. Right, even if the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl smashed onto your body and rolled to your front, it would fly away again. Because it simply doesn't want to choose a trash like you. It doesn't like you at all. Mu Qingya sat on the ground like this, crying and laughing at the same time. She completely lost control of her emotions. Chapter 46-70. The Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and Duan Yu stood nearby. The two considerately did not approach, but their gazes followed Arbor closely, paying attention to his every move. They were ready to react to any sudden situation. Jojo's mood earlier was truly terrible. Although he seemed to have calmed down, from where they stood, Jojo's eyes were truly cold. Arbor coldly watched Mu Qingya, who was crying and laughing like a madwoman, without the slightest bit of sympathy in his heart. He coldly watched her for a long time before saying, "What are you crying for? What's there to be bitter about? Back then, you used Heavenly Providence's influence to trip me up. For that 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl, you sent so many people to the lower star domain to deal with my mother. You still want to deal with me after you're done. What right do you have to cry?" Arbor coldly said, "That's right. You should cry. Your fate in the future will probably be the same as mine, destined to spend the rest of your life in darkness. Mu Qingya, actually, death isn't that scary. The scariest thing is waiting for death in the darkness. I want you to bear it once. All the pain I've ever endured. That's very fair, isn't it?" Mu Qingya suddenly had a flash of inspiration, and it was as if her entire mind had become clear about something. She looked up in horror and stared fixedly at Arbor in front of her, shrieking, "Why you? You're not human, you're not human. You. Her entire body was trembling violently. Just earlier, she suddenly understood something. Why was it that this Qiao Mu seemed to have the help of the gods, always doing everything before her? Why did this Arbor maintain such vigilance toward her from the very first moment he saw her? She thought that she usually acted very well. Even Mu Jingfeng, who had been with her for so many years, so many Mu family members, and even such a steady and capable old patriarch did not recognize her identity. Why did this Arbor determine at a glance that she was not a good person? Until just now, she had a sudden flash of inspiration and suddenly understood the ins and outs of this matter. "You're not human, you're not human." Mu Qingya shrieked, her eyes finally revealing traces of surprise and fear. "You're reborn. You're reborn, aren't you? You. So she would say that the most terrible thing is to wait for death in the dark. So she will say that you have turned her into a useless person like you." Yes. She understood everything. This Arbor was reborn. In her previous life, Mu Qingya had successfully cut off her wings and imprisoned her in a dungeon or some other place. Therefore, all of her scheming had actually succeeded before. What was this? What on earth was this? Why did the heavens treat her like this? Since she had succeeded before, why did she have to reverse her fate in this life and treat her like this? She was unreconciled. Every time she thought of how all of her schemes had actually succeeded, Mu Qingya was so hateful that she gnashed her teeth until they bled. The Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal watched this scene in shock and muttered, What does she mean?" Duan Yu sighed softly. "It means what you think it means." He walked toward Arbor. Chapter 46-71. Jojo, Duan Yu called softly. Duan Yu called her softly with a hint of caution, as though he was afraid of waking her up from a dream. Arbor turned around and looked at him with clear eyes. Duan Yu breathed a sigh of relief. Thankfully, Jojo didn't seem to have lost control of her emotions. When he saw her tone earlier, he thought she was on the verge of a mental breakdown. He didn't expect her to adjust her emotions so quickly. Now that she was looking at him with clear eyes, it seemed like all the negative emotions from before had been settled by her in an instant. Jojo. I'm fine. Arbor shook her head at him. Don't worry, I'm fine now. Duan Yu gave a soft and walked closer to her. Then shall we go out now? His cold gaze landed on that Hall Master Mu. Duan Yu seemed to have realized something. That's right, judging from that Hall Master Mu's hysterical appearance and her words. Duan Yu astutely guessed that the reason Jojo hated this woman so much was probably because he was persecuted by this woman in his previous life. Judging from this woman's words, she really harmed Jojo in his previous life. Although nothing had happened in this life, why did it feel so frightening to listen to? Jojo. Duan Yu walked closer to her and whispered, let's deal with this uncertain factor, okay? What was the point of keeping this person alive? Keeping her to cause trouble for Jojo? Making Jojo recall those bad memories every time he saw her? There was no need to keep this kind of person alive, alright? You can't kill me, you can't kill me, you can't kill me. Mu Qingya turned around with disheveled hair. She couldn't care less about how disheveled she was right now and pounced at Arbor. Duan Yu unceremoniously kicked her back into the corner and coldly reprimanded, stay away from her. What do you know? What do you know? Mu Qingya broke down and screamed, what would a blessed girl like you know? Can you understand how difficult it is for an ordinary person to embark on the path of cultivation after trying countless methods but failing every time? Can you understand the helplessness of a person who is unwilling to be ordinary and wants to move forward bravely, only to be driven mad by reality every time and forced to return to the starting point again? You don't know anything. You don't know anything. Mu Qingya laughed sharply and sarcastically. What right do you have to criticize me? A young lady from an aristocratic family like you, who has a mountain of gold and silver in her hands and doesn't need to worry about food and clothing, what do you know? I don't even belong to this godforsaken place. I tried my best to give everything I had. In the end, you won't get anything. What do you know about the torment of having nothing? Just like the butterfly tasting pavilion, precious painting workshop, and despondent pavilion that I ran in the imperial capital for so many years ha. So what if I manage it well? Isn't it because I have to return everything to you the moment you come back? Just because of that contract, just because you have the right to control their land, just because you are the crown princess of the divine province, no one can defy your wishes. All the hard work I put in will go down the drain, down the drain. If it were you, would you be willing to accept this? Would you? Chapter 46-72. Arbor's pitch-black eyes stared fixedly at her. He didn't say anything and just stared at her coldly without blinking. You're right. All these years, my entire life, it's like I've been a colossal joke. What did I get in the end? I got nothing. You deserved it, Arbor coldly interrupted her. It was you who schemed and schemed, but your scheme failed and you lost everything. If you want to resent someone, resent yourself. Ha 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 ha. Mu Qingya glared at Arbor with a frosty expression. Her eyes were bloodshot, as if she was a malicious spirit from hell. I'm a soul that came from a different time and space. I was originally living well, but the villainous heavens played a huge joke on me and reduced me to this state. Why do I have to suffer this? That person you called Entmaster before, can she travel through space? Who is she, who exactly is she? You don't have the right to know her name. Arbor coldly rejected her certain plan and looked at her mockingly. We've already reached this point, so I advise you not to have such unrealistic thoughts. I want to go back. Go back. Mu Qingya screeched harshly, I want to see that ant master of yours. We're on the same path. She and I are both transmigrators. She will help me, she will definitely help me. She can send me back, she can definitely send me back. You can't go back. Arbor resolutely interrupted her unrealistic thoughts. You will die here, and it will be extremely painful. Mu Qingya collapsed to the ground at once and stared blankly at the little girl before her. This was a ruthless character. This daughter of Long Chuyun's was completely different from her mother in terms of personality. If you could still weep and beg for mercy in front of Long Chuyun, there was no need for that in front of Arbor. Jojo. Duan Yu knitted his brows and whispered, I think this person, I'm fine. Arbor turned to look at him and forced a smile. Do you think this person will affect my emotions and judgment? I won't. I won't be influenced by her anymore. Arbor tugged at his sleeve. Let's go out. Duan Yu coldly swept a glance at Mu Qingya, but he didn't say anything in the end and followed Arbor outside. Mr. Su from the small base in Beiwang Valley sent a message last time. He said that it was a kind of medicinal essence extracted from the corpse puppet's body. It might be helpful in curing the corpse poison. Perfect, there must be corpse poison accumulated in this woman's body. Let me test it out. Arbor paused and looked back at Mu Qingya coldly. Hey, doesn't she like to experiment on human bodies? I'll let her have a taste of this bitter fruit. Arbor, Arbor. Mu Qingya was still screaming. Don't go, don't go. Xiao Mu, find that spatial cultivator for me. I want to go back, I want to go back, you let me go back, ah. Jojo. Me. Just as she reached the entrance of the karst cave, she heard a tall voice jump out at lightning speed and yell in front of her, Jojo, I can do it, I can. Arbor expressionlessly glanced at this guy and suddenly had a feeling, did this lunatic act up again? Didn't you want to find a medicine user to test the medicine on? Chapter 4673. Ming Yas looked at her sincerely and said, I can do it. My body is strong and healthy, and my body is also resistant to poison. Don't worry, your drug won't kill me. When he turned around, he saw Ma Shichen and Duan Yu looking at him as if they were looking at an idiot, and he instantly felt displeased. What's with that look? Ming Yasi glared at them angrily. I'm talking to Jojo right now, not you two. What right did they have to look at him with this kind of disdainful gaze? It was simply baffling. Arbor grumpily shouted at him, Scram. He really was a sick person. There was nothing for him to do, yet he suddenly jumped out and even recommended him to be the drug test subject. Was he sick, and quite seriously so? Did he think that zombie poison was something good? Was this kind of thing a joke? Jojo, that woman inside only knows how to howl, and her body looks weak. She'll definitely die if you torment her for 2 days. How can it compare to my physique? Scram! Arbor grumpily shouted at him. Ming Yasi instantly became indignant. Jojo, you'd rather use that trash of a woman as an experiment than use me? Ma Shichen and Duan Yu looked like they were struck by lightning at the same time. Both of them didn't want to speak with this idiot in front of them and turned to walk away. Arbor even ran at lightning speed while panting with rage. In the blink of an eye, he had already dashed several meters away. Big brother, big brother. Ollie couldn't resist weakly tugging at the corner of his big brother's clothes as he quietly muttered, I think that facial paralysis, it's just doesn't want you to suffer from zombie poison. After all, that experiment to detect zombie poison didn't sound like anything good. If this thing could be easily cured, then wouldn't all the people in the world who were initially infected with zombie poison be saved? However, up until now, there seemed to be no one who had a chance to wake up after being infected with zombie poison. In the end, all of them had turned into walking corpse-like tools that could only rely on their instincts to bite and chase humans. His Highness Miaza's eyes lit up when he heard this. He turned around and ran in the direction of Arbor. "Jojo, speak clearly. Are you worried about my safety, so you don't want me to become a medicine man? I just don't want an idiot like you to waste the antidote that I worked so hard to make," Arbor snorted coldly and muttered. He quickly entered the star field and avoided the idiot who was chasing after him. Dark Yas only felt a trace of a god's domain's aura sweep over, and then it suddenly disappeared without a trace. When he got closer, Jojo was nowhere to be seen. "Arbor, how long do you think you can hide for?" Styaz said angrily. He would wait here for her until she came out. Arbor restrained his aura and stealthily and carefully crept near the Phoenix Spring. She looked at her husband, who was cultivating in seclusion with his eyes closed and holy power revolving around his head. She heaved a sigh of relief and hid behind a tree, peeking her head out to look at him. She propped up her chin with her small hand and looked around, a satisfied smile appearing in her eyes. Good, good, good. Hubby had been so well behaved recently. She was very satisfied to see him cultivating in seclusion like this. Hubby only needed to stay here for 2 months, and it would be equivalent to 2 years outside. He would definitely be able to stabilize the restless holy power in his body. Chapter 46-74. Lord Jojo hid behind the big tree and looked around for a long time. She carefully looked at her husband for a while before retracting her gaze. When she turned around, she almost bumped into someone's arms. Ha! A bell-like laughter came from behind her. Arbor's little face suddenly became a little embarrassed. She glanced at Fairy Yellow Crane who had appeared behind her at some point. "What are you doing?" "Jojo, if I didn't come over, I wouldn't have known that you have a hobby of peeping." "Who's peeping?" Arbor snorted and turned her head with a proud expression. "I'm looking openly." Yes, 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 openly peeping." Fairy Yellow Crane giggled and pulled her hand. "Jojo, come with me. I have something to tell you." Arbor saw Fairy Yellow Crane's expression gradually become serious and knew that she should have something important to announce. She also restrained her expression and walked out of Phoenix Spring with her. "Chocho, take us to the treehouse on Paradise Planet." This treehouse was built by Little Tree for her to rest in at the beginning. But now that Lord Jojo had moved to live in her small courtyard on the main planet, this treehouse was naturally empty. Now it was requisitioned by Fairy Yellow Crane and used as a pharmacy. Arbor followed Yellow Crane into the treehouse and saw several rows of shelves made of wooden vines on both sides. There were many kinds of pills and medicinal liquids neatly stacked on top of them. Small jars and bottles were full. "Jojo, sit down and talk." Fairy Yellow Crane pulled her to sit at the small table. She took the small bottle on the side and put it in front of Arbor. Her expression was very serious. "I've carefully read the message sent by Mr. Su from the small base. They said that a kind of poison was extracted from the body of the 18th sister that was sent there. It has a harmful effect on the human body and nerves. This seems to be the core part of their modification of the human body." Arbor nodded solemnly and took the small bottle from Fairy Yellow Crane. "It's in here." Fairy Yellow Crane nodded slightly. "Yes. How do you think we should continue?" "What Mr. Su means is that this toxin can be perfectly integrated with the human body, so that no one can detect any abnormalities." "Fairy Huang," he said, "I think the improved medicinal liquid made by Tian Yun is this thing. I plan to test it on a few corpses. What do you think?" "Yes," Arbor nodded, "but you can't test it on Paradise Planet." "Of course." Fairy Yellow Crane rolled her eyes. "Do you think I'm stupid?" Forget about our Heavenly Pill Guild's people. However, how are we supposed to bring those alchemists, whose backgrounds we do not know, into Paradise Planet? We'll carve out a place on that snowy island where only alchemists can go. The pharmacists from the Tsang Prefecture and the Underworld Prefecture were all here. There is strength in numbers. I need their help. All right. Arbor nodded. I will discuss this matter with Ming Yasi and Duan Yu. If you need anything, just tell us. Fairy Yellow Crane nodded with a grin. Do you have any other good suggestions, Jojo? I have an experimental subject here that you can use, Xiao Mu stated coldly with her eyes. Fairy Yellow Crane was taken aback. From her understanding of Jojo, this little stoic looked ice cold on the outside, but she was actually quite warm on the inside. She couldn't easily send some irrelevant people into a place like the laboratory. Chapter 46-75. Especially those ordinary civilians. With the little stoic's pride, it was impossible for her to lay a hand on them. This person's body carries corpse poison to begin with. Help me study it. This person's eyes should have a special ability in that aspect. Arbor said icily, there's plenty of time, so you can take your time to study it. In addition, you'll have a reference in the future. See if the degree of mutation of the corpse is different from this woman's body. I can give you a direction. Arbor said indifferently, in the beginning, Tianyun probably used a basic mutation potion to transform people. The kind that can fill the sky with it. Using nightcaw birds to spread it quickly, and if it enters a water source, it can increase mutation in a large area. Thus, a portion of people really did obtain special abilities. These lucky people are the opposite of the majority of unlucky people. At first, this basic potion only mutated corpses, but after improvement, it can mutate living bodies. After that, they probably mass-produced level 1 mutation pills. After taking it, a black crystal under the master's control will appear in the brain. Level 2 and Level 3 mutation pills strengthen the user's special abilities. It allows the corpse puppet to undergo a continuous mutation. Their strength, speed, and defensive capabilities will all increase with this mutation. What will these corpse puppets evolve into in the end? I don't know. We also don't know how far Tianyun's mutation pills have progressed. You can conduct in-depth research based on the poison developed by the small base. Researching on the corpse is the first step. The living body I gave you is also very important to research. You have to discover the pattern of her gradual mutation from her body and find some clues from there. You should be able to gain something by researching in this direction. As long as we can research the pattern of the poison's mutation and the medicinal ingredients involved, we will be able to crack it in a targeted manner. Fairy Yellow Crane nodded repeatedly as she listened. As she listened, she took out a small notebook and recorded everything that Sir Jojo said. Jojo, I understand the direction now. Don't worry, as long as we have enough time, we will definitely be able to find the pattern. However, the experimental body you mentioned, is Madame Mu? Arbor raised his eyebrows. Is there a problem? There's no problem. Fairy Huang he coughed lightly. It's just that I feel that Madame Mu, his body looks a little weak, as if he can't withstand any torment. Fairy Yellow Crane did not feel guilty at all when she said this. In her opinion, since Madame Mu had chosen to become Tianyun's lackey, she was their enemy. As long as she thought of how crazy Feng Lan was after joining Tianyun, she no longer sympathized with Mu Qinya. As long as there was a way, it would be better to deal with Tianyun and that group of lunatics. Arbor glanced at her. You can help her recuperate, but don't be too nice to her. Huang he was speechless. Then, this degree of control was really difficult. He wanted her to live as an experimental subject, but he couldn't let her live too comfortably. Just thinking about it made him feel that it was a little difficult. Arbor and Huang he left the star field. Chapter 46-76. Heh heh. Ming Yassi's laughter abruptly rang out behind the little stoic. Fairy Yellow. He hastily turned her head to look and involuntarily rolled her eyes. What are you doing here? I'm waiting for you. Ming Yassi scurried forward and sized her up. Stoic, you haven't answered the question I asked you earlier. The little stoic had a, I can't be bothered to waste my breath on an idiot like you, expression. Nether Yass took another step forward. Fairy Yellow. He hastily blocked him with her arm and stood between him and Arbor. She grumbled, what are you doing? I'm telling you, Crown Prince Lien might not be here for the time being. But believe it or not, as long as I raise my voice, I guarantee that His Majesty of Tsangzhou and the Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal will come here to beat you up. I'm warning you, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Stay away from our Jojo. Can't you see that Jojo doesn't want to see you? Ming Yassi had learned his lesson now. He knew that no matter how angry he was, he couldn't get into a conflict with the people around the little stoic. To put it nicely, she was overprotective. To put it bluntly, she was extremely selfish and couldn't bear to see the people around her suffer grievances. The first time they met, he had foolishly attacked the little stoic's fellow disciples, so she bore a grudge against him until now. Arbor expressionlessly glanced at him and grumpily said, are you bored to death? What was wrong with this person? He liked to provoke her every now and then. She wanted to beat him up every time she saw him, but when she thought of the adult sacred beast beside him, she decided to forget it. Arbor summoned 2 Tsangzhou guards and whispered into their ears. Then, he casually handed them a bottle of medicinal liquid. The 2 nodded obediently and turned to walk towards the cave with the medicinal liquid. Fairy Yellow. He wasn't very curious and didn't ask anything. She merely folded her claws behind her back and followed behind Arbor. You still haven't replied. His Highness Ming Yassi was a very persistent person. Arbor glanced back and abruptly roared, what reply? Are you sick in the head? She had no idea what he was talking about at all. Ming Yassi hastily took another step forward, and his pitch-black eyes stared at the little stoic in front of him like a hawk. Are you worried about me? I'm worried about your ancestors, Arbor retorted. Fairy Yellow Crane. Why was it that when she listened to their conversation, she felt that it was like the daily bickering between children? You are indeed worried about me. You're worried about me, that's why you don't want me to test the medicine, right? Arbor chuckled. I'm just worried that you'll be even more foolish after trying the medicine. Ming Yassi was speechless. I don't believe it. Actually, you're just worried about me. You're afraid that I've been poisoned, right? Just admit it, little stoic. Is it very difficult for you to admit this? Arbor was too lazy to continue talking to him. She was about to leave when she suddenly thought of something and retracted her steps. She turned to look at him. Ming Yassi. Ming Yassi's eyes lit up, and he instantly transformed into a loyal dog. He ran to Arbor's side and wished for nothing more than to wag his large tail. Jojo, you called my name. You're simply crazy. Arbor looked at him incredulously for a good while. Why didn't he realize before that this person was simply an example of being unreasonable? Why was it so tiring to talk to him? Chapter 46-77. She suddenly wanted to find Duan Yu to speak on her behalf. Don't speak. Arbor coldly interrupted him before continuing, let me finish. Speak. Ming Yassi nodded repeatedly. Your batch of apothecaries is all here, right? Yes, they're all here. Ming Yassi nodded. Jojo, do you have a plan? Arbor grunted in response. Hand over your batch of pill refiners and apothecaries to my Huang He for assignment. No problem. Of course not. Ming Yassi was exceptionally easy to talk to now. Arbor glanced at him in surprise. Before that, properly talk to them. I don't want them to have trouble with this and that when they arrive at Huang He's place. Since Huang He will be assigning the tasks, I hope that they won't talk too much when the time comes. Arbor expressionlessly said, if they do well, they will be rewarded. If they slow down my side's progress, they will create a bunch of annoying problems for me. She coldly paused and swept a glance at Ming Yasi. You know how I deal with things. If the situation is serious, I might not be able to control my desire to rip people off. In short, it was just one sentence, don't cause trouble for me. It was just that simple. Don't worry, I will instruct them. This was exactly what Arbor wanted to hear. This batch of pill refiners might not all be willing to listen to Huang He. Don't create a bunch of troublesome problems and cause her trouble for no reason. Putting the ugly words out in advance was Arbor's standard for handling matters. Since she had already informed them beforehand, if they caused trouble at that time, don't blame her for being ruthless. Jojo, don't worry. Ming Yasi hastily said, with me restraining them, they definitely won't cause trouble for you. Arbor nodded and brought Huang He to find Duanyu. She only needed to say the same thing to Duanyu, Duanyu, I want your Tsangzhou's pill refiners. Without saying anything else, Duanyu naturally went to find someone to call that batch of alchemists over and gave them a few indifferent instructions. Fairy Yellow Crane was watching from the side. She heard the young Tsangzhou Emperor say indifferently, in the next few months, you will follow Fairy Yellow Crane. Just do whatever she tells you to do. Speak less and do more. If you don't understand, just ask. Do you have any objections? The group of alchemists shook their heads in unison, and this matter was settled just like that. The little stoic tilted her head and glanced at Duanyu. Just as she was about to praise him, she saw a Tsangzhou guard hurrying to Duanyu's side with an anxious expression and whispering into his ear. Due to the distance, Arbor could only hear the Tsang Prefecture guards whisper, Yen City, the situation is serious. She quickly ran to his side and asked, what's wrong? It's fine. Duanyu turned to glance at her with a smile. The little stoic rolled her eyes at him. Hurry up and speak. Duanyu wanted to laugh, but when he saw her anxious appearance, he said, fortunately, Yen City has been surrounded, and the nearby city defense forces have already been transferred over. The little stoic was a bit anxious at once. Don't be fooled by this man's nonchalant manner, it definitely wasn't just that. The Heavenly Fate Society's people came to seize the stronghold, right? Arbor quickly said, we'll bring people over together. What's the rush? Duanyu quickly stopped her when he saw her about to leave to inform the others. This matter is a bit complicated. Chapter 4678. With Yen City's geographical location, numbers alone won't do us any good if we want to break in after being surrounded. Jojo, I have to leave early. Arbor stared at him for a long while with a disapproving expression. Don't worry, I have a way to deal with it. Duanyu smiled. How about having Rong Qing stay here and watch over the training to kill the Heavenly Fate? If you have any unresolved matters, just tell him. He will help you. Arbor stared at him with his dark eyes for a long while before stiffly saying, let's go together. Duanyu wanted to laugh and said seriously, with my cultivation, there aren't many people in the world who can hurt me. But after I leave, you have to be careful in everything. I'll leave 2 people to watch over that Muqingya. No need. Sir Jojo flatly rejected. Take them with you. The Heavenly Fate will definitely make a move in the next few days. If possible, I want to stay here to protect you. Xiao Mu cast him a glance and raised her meaty fist. It's not like I'm a weakling. Duanyu couldn't help but nod. Okay. My trip to Yen City will take about a month. I'll come back to find you after dealing with them. Arbor was still a bit worried and pressed. You plan to bring people to infiltrate that city? You'll only be a small pre-battle team after entering. Do you have a way to deal with them? Yen City's geographical location is a bit special. It's surrounded by water on all sides, so there are protective devices underwater. As long as we can successfully enter. A faint glint flitted across Duan Yu's eyes. Don't worry, those people won't be able to return. Arbor heard him make it sound simple, but he felt it was very unreliable and couldn't be at ease. Then bring a few pharmacists with you and go back together. He didn't know the current situation in that city. He had never heard of this city's name before. Presumably, it wasn't ranked high in Sangzhou. But somehow, it caught the attention of the Heavenly Fate. Didn't the Heavenly Fate usually look for strongholds outside the three states? For example, an underground black market like Jiawei City. Now that they had suddenly extended their evil claws to Zhangzhou's Yen City, they really couldn't figure out what the people of Tianyun would do next. All right. Duan Yu smiled helplessly at her. I'll bring 5 medicinal alchemists with me, so we should be safe now, right? Don't worry. I'll be back soon. Duan Yu repeatedly consoled the little stoic, and it was only then that her taut little face relaxed slightly. The situation was rather urgent, so Duan Yu led those 5 pharmacists away from the snowy island in the afternoon. The little stoic gazed in the direction their ship left in, feeling ill at ease the entire afternoon. Because of this, Ming Si even ran over to her and said a few words of jealousy. What kind of danger could that guy be in? Do you think anyone in this world can casually injure him? He said a string of words like that in a sour tone. The little stoic rolled her eyes at him in disdain. Ming Si followed her and said, if I also received news from Ming province and had to leave the island, would you also be worried about me like you are worried about him? The little stoic couldn't be bothered with this person. She didn't expect this guy to be a natural jinx. In the evening, they received an urgent message from Ming province. The situation was actually much more critical than Zhangzhou's Yen City. Chapter 46-79. He really didn't expect that his words would come true. Ming Yasi was incredibly irritated. The place where Tianyun attacked Ming province wasn't a small place like Tsang province's Yen City. Their attack location was only 250 kilometers away from the royal capital, Great Yong City, and it had already ignited panic in the royal capital. If this matter couldn't be handled properly, it definitely wouldn't end well. Now that his old father had ordered someone to urgently send him a message urging him to return, it looked like the matter had already developed into a serious state. Seeing this fellow's gloomy expression, the little stoic gave him a rare smile. Ming Yasi's gloomy mood instantly vanished without a trace. He stared at Arbor in pleasant surprise and exclaimed, Jojo, you smiled at me. This is the first time you've smiled at me. Dunce, he couldn't tell that she was gloating over his misfortune. You're seeing things. Arbor rolled his eyes and returned to his expressionless face. He asked without a trace of emotion, then when do you plan to leave? I'm leaving right now. Arbor made an "oh" sound and silently tossed him several medicine bottles. Seeing that this fellow's brain was working well recently, he was quite cooperative in everything, and he was also willing to spend money. She reluctantly helped him. Ciao ciao. Ming Yas immediately felt overwhelmed by this unexpected favor. This was the first time he received a gift from Jojo. If Jojo knew what he was thinking now, he would definitely snort disdainfully. Who gave you a gift? You're just blowing your own trumpet, shameless. After Ming Yasi left with Duan Yu, Sir Jojo started to ponder. She called Huang He over and said, I've set up 10 illusion talisman matrices outside the snowy mountain valley you're staying in. I've set up a trapping formation in the middle. If you want to come out and walk around, send me a message. Aside from this, no matter what you hear, you don't need to care. Just focus on your experiments. Huang He was currently conducting research in the depths of the snowy mountain valley with several dozen pill refiners from Heavenly Pill Guild and Ming Province and Song Province. That area was very quiet and deserted. They didn't even set up guards to avoid attracting attention. However, Arbor spent a day and a night setting up no less than 100 glyphs in that place. Among them, there were 10 illusion glyph arrays and 5 triple defense arrays. In addition, there were also countless shielding, bewildering, and trapping formations. Stacked together, there were 10 terrifying formations. As if it were a game, the guy had surrounded the snowy valley in hundreds of rune arrays. If the alchemists who were doing research in the snowy mountain valley wanted to come out, they could only send a message to Arbor. Arbor had given them permission to teleport from the snowy island more than 10 miles away. Only then could they teleport from there. However, the snowy ridge valley had all sorts of food. Once alchemists immersed themselves in research, they simply could not think of anything else. Huang he asked curiously, "Xiao Xiao, did you foresee that something was going to happen?" Arbor didn't conceal it and said with a nod, "Look, they sent Duan Yu and Ming Yasi away in succession. It's very obvious that they want to attack us." Huang he was taken aback. Then, he asked anxiously, "Since you know, why?" Xiao Mu's eyes contained a sneer. "I'm a bit curious now though. I wonder how many people the Heavenly Fate Legion can dispatch for this whole Master Mu." Later, the 30,000 plus elites of the Heavenly Fate Legion received news at the same time. They cancelled their rest for today and were all on guard, waiting for the enemy to fall into their trap. Chapter 4680. This wait lasted for almost an entire night. It wasn't until the sky was slightly brighter that a considerable commotion was heard from the snowy mountain valley. Arbor immediately led 3,000 elite troops and rushed toward that place first. From afar, they could only see billowing smoke and dust. When they got closer, they were shocked to see about 1,000 to 2,000 monsters wrapped in rhinoceros hide charging at the valley barrier in front of them. The barrier in front of them reached the sky and was about 1,000 feet wide. This was a large-scale multi-layered defense talisman matrix with who knew how many layers. They couldn't help but gasp in astonishment. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal silently glanced at the little stoic beside him. He only knew that the little stoic had been quite busy recently and had continuously drawn talismans in the star domain for a long time. He didn't know that this little fellow had silently set up such a freakish defense talisman matrix. "Why are you looking at me?" Arbor sensed the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, little Taiswei, and the others' gazes repeatedly landing on him, and he couldn't resist turning back to glance at them. "You're..." Seeing the confusion on their faces, Arbor said calmly, "I overlaid 99 triple defense talisman matrices. Everyone, using 99 triple defense talisman matrices to construct a large-scale defense diagram. The effect seems to be alright." Sir Jojo sighed and said, "It's just that I'm afraid the illusion talisman matrix, trapping matrix, maze matrix, and other offensive matrix inside won't be used. Look at how long they've been attacking. With this kind of power, they'll probably need to attack for more than a year before they can break through this large defense matrix I set up." Everyone, young Sir Ding couldn't resist bursting into laughter. "Then actually, we can all go rest. There's no need to stay up in the middle of the night and continue to waste time here with this bunch of idiots. In your dreams." Arbor's gaze shifted and landed on him. He said aloofly, "Obliterate these man-made monsters. Use the rhinoceros hide under your ears as the benchmark. The first 100 people to obtain the most rhinoceros hide will receive an additional 3 fine sky jade dragon pills as a reward." The elites of the 3 provinces howled and immediately formed small square formations in a well-trained manner, encircling and annihilating the rhinoceros hide men in front of the defensive wall. Boom! Sparks flew as the crowd collided with the rhinoceros skin team. Countless streams of spiritual energy flew towards the rhinoceros skin man. Arbor turned around and looked in the direction of Long Shangyun, Ding Yun, and the others. Suddenly, he smiled and said, "Why don't you guys take a guess? How did Tian Yun come to our island with so many people? He appeared in the snowy mountain valley without making a sound. Could they have sensed Hall Master Mu's aura from 1,000 miles away and stayed in that snowy valley? Long Shangyun immediately jumped up anxiously. You can't be suspecting that we are secretly colluding with someone from Tianyun, right? Arbor looked at her for a long moment. There was a hint of anger and surprise in the latter's eyes, as well as an indescribable disappointment. All right, I apologize. I was being paranoid. Arbor nodded and looked at Long Yen. Young Master Long, how do you think these rhinoceros-skinned people were able to come to the snow island without being noticed? Long Yen sighed. They were probably brought in a spatial container. He stared at her for a long time. Cousin, I hope that we can at least trust each other. Arbor looked back. Chapter 4681. She suddenly smiled at him and nodded. Okay. Long Qian felt a chill run down his spine. It was rare for his cousin to speak to him with a smile, but it made him feel uneasy and uncomfortable. It was like Long Qian shook his head and forced a smile at her. Then, he picked up his sword and ran toward the rhinoceros-skinned men. Arbor turned around and looked at young Master Ding. He saw that he was looking at him with a smile, but he didn't say anything. His gaze was very strange. This group of rhinoceros-skinned men had very tough skin, and their attack power was not weak either. Fortunately, after a period of training to kill the Tianyun battle team, their chemistry had improved a lot. With their advantage in numbers, they defeated the rhinoceros-skinned men without any injuries. There was no suspense in this battle. After winning the first battle, the members of the Tianyun battle team were all very excited as they cleaned up the battlefield and counted the spoils of war. Jojo, are you suspecting Long Qian and his sister or Ding Yun? Little Taisui walked up to Arbor and asked. To be honest, Arbor felt that they were all suspicious. The entire island had an irreconcilable feud with the Tianyun battle team, so this could be ruled out. Other than that, Long Xinghua's group of old and weak women and children on the island was unlikely to have anything to do with the Tianyun battle team. The remaining people were Long Qian and Long Shangyun, as well as Ding Yun and Sikong Fuling. Her intuition was actually leaning toward suspecting the Long family. After all, they had a criminal record. Moreover, Long Qian suddenly came to them and wanted to join them to kill the Tianyun battle team. Along the way, he brought people to Snow Island with great difficulty. On the surface, it looked like he was definitely at odds with the Tianyun battle team. But his people should have all joined the Tianyun battle team by now, right? However, she had known Ding Yun for so long, but she still couldn't see through him. Speaking of which, his real name should be Long Yun. Could it be? Old Patriarch. Tu Xianzi held a fox head scepter and slowly moved to Long Qian, who had his eyes closed. Speak. Miss Shui Yuan's situation can't be delayed any longer. She is the hope of our entire clan. Long Qian closed her eyes. Do you think that I'm not anxious? But what can I do? She's a prophet of the future. She's more prophetic than I am. Every judgment she made was correct. She foresaw our future because of the 10,000-year mermaid pearl. No matter the cost, we must take it back, Patriarch. There can be no more hesitation. Long Qian took a deep breath and closed her eyes with a heavy breath. After all, she is my granddaughter. Clan leader. Tu Xianji said anxiously, Miss Shui Yuan is also your eldest granddaughter. And with her talent, as long as she wakes up, she will be able to survive. In less than 3 years, he will definitely be able to lead our entire clan to control the various large seas around the River of Forgetfulness. Don't forget. Miss Shui Yuan, for the sake of our clan, made a prediction for the next 30 years. She spent too much effort and fell into a coma. How can you betray Miss Shui Yuan's heart for an outsider? She's the one who's racking her brains for the sake of our race's prosperity. Patriarch, there are differences between relatives and strangers. Please make a decision soon. Long Qian sighed deeply. Go and ask 13th Elder to come out of seclusion. Tu Xianji's eyes flashed with joy. He quickly cupped his hands and said, yes. Chapter 4682. Clan Leader. A member of the Dragon Clan rushed in and looked at Long Qian with a complicated expression. The messenger from Tianyun is here. Long Qian didn't even bat an eyelid. Is it Miss Mu again? No. The clan member lowered his eyes and said softly, it's a few young masters this time. Long Qian nodded and stood up. She glanced at Tu Xianji and said, go ahead and do what you have to do. Yes. Tu Xianji frowned and whispered, Clan leader, are we really going to work with Tianyun? Everyone knew that the three prefectures had started to form a team to kill Tianyun. If they were to work with Tianyun openly, they would be making an enemy out of the three prefectures. This wasn't a wise move at all. We don't have any other choice. Long Qian rubbed between his eyebrows and said, some of them have tried the new liquid that Tianyun brought out. It's good for their bodies. But Tu Xianji still found it strange that Tianyun would be so kind as to provide the Dragon Clan members with the advancement liquid. There were several young disciples in the clan who obtained a special ability after taking the liquid. Most of them were strength-based, but there were also sharpness and defensive abilities. Tianyun's generosity this time was strange. But Tu Xianji couldn't tell what was wrong. Will Tianyun reject our plan? Tu Xianji suddenly asked. Long Qian frowned. Aren't they enemies with the three prefectures? Why would they reject us? Didn't they want to kill Tianyun the most? But you're right. We don't need to tell Tianyun that we're sending people to the deserted island. Then young master and Miss Shangyun, Long Qian waved his hand. They chose their own path. It's up to them what they want to do. The person who came was Gong Songfeng, the head of the underground hall. Long Qian met Tianyun and the others in the hall. Other than Gong Songfeng, there were three other good-looking young men. Long Qian cupped his hands politely. May I know why you're here? We're almost done talking about our cooperation. Gong Songfeng glanced at the old patriarch, took out a brocade box, and handed it to Long Qian. When Long Qian opened it, her eyelids twitched. There were 300 bottles of medicinal liquid neatly arranged inside, and each small bottle was only enough for one mouthful. However, it was precisely this medicinal liquid that had allowed several youths in their clan to awaken very good special abilities. According to the messenger of the Heavenly Fate Palace, this kind of medicinal liquid could raise a person's cultivation by at least one small realm. Depending on the person's aptitude, the span of improvement would also be different. As for whether or not one could awaken a special ability, that would depend on one's talent. Long Qian took a deep breath and closed the lid of the box. Then, she said calmly, tell me your conditions. Since the other party was willing to give out so many medicinal liquids at once, it was impossible that they didn't want anything in return. Hall Chief Gong had a calm look on his face as he smiled at Long Qian. Since we are working together, it is only natural for us to reciprocate. Let's treat this as a gift from Tianyun to the Dragon Clan. Hall Master Gong's eyes flashed with a faint light. I hope that when the time comes, when we concentrate our forces to attack a certain place, the Dragon Clan will not hesitate to send people to help. Chapter 4683. Long Qian nodded with a smile. I understand. Fan Meng, who was standing behind Gong Songfeng, couldn't help but raise her head and look at the old chief. Did she know what kind of gift she had just received? Fan Meng's eyes drooped as her lips curled into a mocking smile. Chief. Another man came to report. The chief of the Duo family wishes to see you. Long Qian looked at Gong Songfeng apologetically and nodded. I'm sorry. I'll go meet the guest first. Go ahead. Gong Songfeng waved his hand casually as he watched Long Qian leave with her men. He rubbed his chin with his finger as he stared at Long Qian's back. There was no lack of naive fools in this world. You guys can stay here and watch over these test subjects. Gong Songfeng said with an indifferent expression. Okay. Hong Yi nodded and smiled. I wonder how effective this batch of improved medicine is. The cost of the medicine is much lower than the mutated pills. If it can be proven that the effects are similar, maybe it will change the world in the future. Louis couldn't help but laugh. Change the world? How? Alright, stop talking nonsense. Gong Songfeng looked around cautiously. Although his divine sense didn't sense anyone approaching, this was still the territory of the Wangchuan Long family. He couldn't be too presumptuous. Are we going to find out what the chief of the Long family and the chief of the Duo family are planning? Fan Meng lowered her eyes and asked softly. I don't think it's a big deal. Let those two old men do whatever they want. Let's go. Hong Yi smiled with disdain, not caring about the Wangchuan Long family and the Duo family at all. On the other hand, Long Qian found a small, secluded hall to receive the chief of the Wangchuan Duo family. Before that, she used her divine sense to create a barrier around the hall to prevent Tianyun and the other young men from eavesdropping. However, it was obvious that the other party didn't care about what she was planning. Chief Duo. Long Qian looked at the man with a gloomy expression in surprise. This man had a square face and a wide nose. He wore a long green robe and had sharp eyebrows. It was the head of the Forgotten Creek Duo clan, Duo Chang. Dragon clan leader, I won't beat around the bush. Let's get straight to the point. Duo Chang said with a pained expression, on the deserted island near the snowy mountains, it is said that there are 33,000 elite soldiers from the 3 prefectures. Some of them are even sent by your Forgotten River Dragon clan, right? When Long Qian heard this, her face immediately darkened and she said coldly, Are you here to denounce me? No. Duo Chang shook his head and said, I want to save my son. My son, Duo Shanming, is being held captive on that island. It is said that the one who has taken over the island is your granddaughter, Dragon Clan leader. You two have some history. Could you please speak up and ask her to release my son? I'm willing to apologize for what happened before. I only ask that she let my son go. Long Qian's face turned even uglier. The relationship between the one who had taken over the island and claimed to be the king had already come to an end. I'm sorry, Mr. Duo. I can't help you, Long Qian said coldly. She didn't have a good relationship with that person. She paused and suddenly said, If you want to save him, you can join us. Chapter 4684. Clan leader Duo Chang's eyes lit up. What do you mean, clan leader Long? We also plan to attack the deserted island, Long Qian said indifferently. Duo Chang was stunned and looked at Long Qian suspiciously. Isn't that your granddaughter? We've broken up a long time ago. Long Qian waved her hand impatiently and sneered at Duo Chang. You caused such a huge commotion in our Wangchuan Dragon clan. You're so close to us. How could clan leader Duo not know? Duo Chang could only touch his nose and smile awkwardly. Alright, since it's a cooperative relationship, I also want to know what kind of force you'll send. 13th Elder. Duo Chang's eyes widened. Are you going to call 13th Elder back from the Holy Region? This is a matter of life and death for our clan, Long Qian said indifferently. She lowered her eyes, and Duo Chang suddenly realized that this clan leader Long was quite ruthless. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't be able to bear to harm their own granddaughter. An iron-blooded woman was indeed an iron-blooded woman. She was extraordinary and different from ordinary women. I don't have a choice. After Long Qian said that, he stood up and walked out of the room. Clan leader Duo, I have already shown my clan's combat strength. You should have the same combat strength to work with me. Don't you want to save your son? Long Qian had heard about Duo Shanming's incident. She turned to look at Duo Chang. Based on my understanding of her, I'm afraid your son is already dead. The little stoic was too decisive. She probably wouldn't let Duo Shanming live. Duo Chang's eyes narrowed, and he was filled with rage. How confident are you? 90%, Long Qian said indifferently. Her temper is like this. Clan leader Duo, you should prepare for your funeral as soon as possible. Duo Chang smashed the table beside him in anger. If anything happens to my son, I'll pull out her tendons and skin her alive. She'll never be reincarnated. Long Qian only glanced at Duo Chang coldly before looking away and slowly walking out of the door. We'll gather tomorrow morning. I hope clan leader Duo will have all your men ready before dawn. Arbor quivered and almost rolled out of his bed. She reached out and rubbed her eyes. She hurriedly lifted the blanket and ran barefoot towards Phoenix's direction. She ran behind the tree and peeped at her husband for a while. He found that she was motionless, as still as water, showing no signs of waking up. Arbor raised his hand and pressed his chest, muttering to himself in a low voice, I felt an inexplicable sense of panic just now. I thought something had happened to my husband. Her husband was perfectly fine. Hence, Xiao Mu simply used her divine conscience to roam around the star domain. He discovered that the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal was lazily sleeping on a hammock, Holy Sun Mi Yen was meditating, and little Taisui was peeling peanuts to eat with wine. When her divine sense swept over them, the three of them raised their eyes at the same time, revealing puzzled expressions. Jojo, why do you keep spying on us? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal got up and sat lazily on the hammock. What? Jojo is spying on us. Dao Wuji's panicked voice came from nearby. I'm taking a bath. Arbor's small face instantly darkened, and she grumpily shouted, Go ahead and take a bath. I find it an eyesore. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal burst into laughter. Jojo, where are you? Chapter 4685. Arbor swallowed the rest of her words, and her eyes chilled. Heh, someone else has come to visit Hall Master Mu. Her figure left the star domain in an instant. At the same time, little Taisui and Ma Shichen also ran out. Behind them was Everlasting Blade, a burden they couldn't shake off. Weren't you bathing? Arbor glanced at her grumpily. Everlasting Blade rubbed his nose and chuckled foolishly. That's right, I just finished bathing. I heard something so interesting, so I came out to take a look. What was so interesting about it? Arbor couldn't help but roll her eyes. In this one day and night, 3 to 4 groups of people came, and each group moved to rescue Mu Qingya. It seemed that Mu Qingya was indeed a core member of Heavenly Fate. These people didn't hesitate to sacrifice so many mutated three-eyed harpies and rhinoceros-skinned men just to take her back from Arbor. Unfortunately, they couldn't even break through the first layer of the defensive talisman matrix, let alone the rest. Do I know you? Arbor noticed the masked middle-aged man leading the group this time, and her gaze involuntarily stopped on him. Looking at his appearance, he felt that he was somewhat familiar. The little girl had always been very sensitive to her enemies. Since she felt that he seemed familiar, it meant that she must have seen him somewhere before. The middle-aged man sneered at her and subconsciously rubbed the emerald ring on his left thumb. He said coldly in a deep voice, Oh. The crown princess is a noble with many people, so how can you recognize this old man? The little stoic coldly glanced at him and whipped his face with a vine whip without a second word. Speaking in such an eccentric manner. Speak properly. The middle-aged man was clearly angered to the point of amusement. He dodged and shouted angrily, I'll give you a word of advice. Hand over Hall Master Mu. What kind of ugly thing dares to jump up and down in front of me? You're so long-winded. Arbor's voice suddenly paused. Her gaze landed on the emerald ring on the man's thumb, and a thought flashed through her mind. She suddenly clenched her fists and snorted. I remember now. I remember you. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and little Ticeway, whose movements were halted by the little stoic's shout, couldn't help but turn to look at him. Who is he? Dao Wuji asked in a daze. In the next second, the little stoic waved her hand and took out several pieces of drawing paper from her inner world. She flipped open one of them and shook it in front of everyone. Her voice was cold as she stared at the painting. She said expressionlessly, Ubatian, male. He was 58 years old. The patriarch of the Yu family in Wuxia city of Shantian Prefecture. His actual combat strength was unknown. Realm, unknown. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal could not help but twitch the corner of his mouth. He hurriedly reached out to take the few pieces of paper that the little fellow had shaken open. Dao Wuji almost burst out laughing when he saw this. Xiaomu glanced at him expressionlessly before snatching back the arrest warrants in the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's hands and stuffing the rest into her sleeve. Holding the wanted poster of Ubatian in his hand, he compared it up and down, left and right, then pointed at the green thumb ring on the man's thumb. It's exactly the same. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal raised his hand to rub his glabella. He couldn't help but think, the atmosphere was clearly so tense. Looking at the little stoic's adorable expression, he couldn't help but want to laugh. What was going on? Where the hell did she learn this bad habit? She even drew and recorded the fleeing enemies one by one in a book. Was she going to compare and deal with them one by one in the future? Chapter 4686. When enemies met, their eyes blazed with hatred. When family head Yu saw the little stoic in front of him, his expression instantly turned extremely ugly. When he saw this girl, he thought of his dead eldest son, Yu Hui. That genius of the Yu family was completely destroyed by this little girl just like that. The life lantern that Yu Hui sent back before his death was a bit blurry. Even now, he didn't know how his son died. He only vaguely saw what seemed to be a dagger repeatedly penetrating Yu Hui's neck. It had been a long time since the incident, so long that he almost forgot about this little stoic. She suddenly appeared in front of him so vividly that his eyes turned bloodshot from anger. A woman who killed his son should pay for it with her life. Hall Master Mu is truly amazing. Arbor stared coldly at family head Yu, a mocking smile on his lips. I told you that the person behind your Yu family couldn't be as simple as that lackey of the Panga clan. Arbor stared coldly at Ubatian and said coldly, when brother dog of the Panga clan came to find you, you decided to beat him at his own game, didn't you? You could complete the mission Mu Qingya gave you and sell a favor to the Panga clan at no cost. You really made a good deal out of this deal. Unfortunately, you didn't expect that I would leave the underground arena alive. You also didn't expect that the son you sent out would die in my hands just like that. Shut up. Ubatian roared angrily. That's right, the thing he regretted the most right now was sending his son Yu Hui to the small arena of Qian Luo's underground arena to fight this little stoic. That's right, he was the one who single-handedly caused Yu Hui's death. It was all his fault for being headstrong and opinionated. This extremely talented son died in the hands of the stoic. How did my son die? Him. That little bastard, he naturally died from his own stupidity. Arbor said coldly and mockingly, after the medicine he took to increase his cultivation by 3 times began to lose its effect, most of the spirit energy in his body disappeared without a trace after half an hour. Ubatian's eyes instantly widened, a hint of scarlet in the whites of his eyes. Arbor. Arbor narrowed her eyes, and the startled swan dagger flew out from her conscious, aiming straight for Ubatian's neck. Clang! Ubatian reached out to grab the dagger. However, how could he catch it? The startled swan dagger jumped out and stabbed his hand, then flew into Arbor's hand. Ubatian's palms were as hard as iron claws. Arbor took a closer look and saw that Ubatian's hand had indeed turned into an iron claw. It could stretch and shrink freely and was very agile. His fingers were like iron branches, each of them extremely thin and long. Arbor looked at him coldly. Did you fuse with the iron rhinoceros claws? So you're the little leader of the rhinoceros-skinned people. Arbor sneered. You look so funny. Ubatian, did you ever think that you would end up like this? If you look like this, even if you successfully rescue Hall Master Mu, you won't be able to look at her. She probably won't even bother to look at you, right? Arbor said sarcastically. It seems that Shuntian Prefecture's Prefecture Lord Gung is much more normal than you. Shut up. Arbor swung a vine whip at Ubatian's arm. A deep layer of ice flashed in her eyes. You're the one who should shut up. Snap. Chapter 4687. The vine whip left a long and thin white mark on Ubatian's arm. Arbor's eyes were clear and bone-chilling. Family head, you, didn't you receive your son's life lantern miniature? What? You didn't see it clearly? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal glanced at Arbor helplessly. As long as Jojo encountered someone he disliked, his words would be extremely sharp and terrifying. He could already imagine how stimulating the little stoic's next words would be. As expected. Arbor didn't need Ubatian's reply and naturally continued. Your son's spirit energy dissipated, and in the end, I used this dagger to repeatedly stab his neck meridians. Then, Arbor suddenly winked at Ubatian and sneered, he died. Yu Hui released 2 zombies, one big and one small, outside Qian Luo's underground arena. The small zombie even bit her and almost killed her. Just because she didn't die didn't mean she wasn't injured. At the time, she was so scared that she almost fainted. She thought she would never see Jojo's lotus for the rest of her life. She had suffered a great loss at Yu Hui's hands, and from then on, she developed a habit. When fighting zombies, she had to pay special attention to their movements in case there was a companion zombie hidden somewhere on their bodies. This incident had both pros and cons for her. At the time, she clearly understood that she wasn't invincible. When fighting zombies, if she let her guard down, she might suffer a fatal blow. Ubatian clenched his fists tightly and roared. Then, a large group of weirdos wrapped in rhinoceros skin charged toward them like a tide. Ubatian's gaze abruptly turned cold as he stared at Xiao Mu. Suddenly, he sidestepped and reached out to grab her. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's seemingly soft palm quickly dispersed Ubatian's attack. He leaped away and lured Ubatian to the side to exchange blows. Ubatian wasn't a fool. He naturally saw that Arbor was the core of this place. Right now, as long as he could grab Arbor with lightning speed, he could resolve all of his current troubles and rescue Qinya from the defensive talisman matrix. With a wave of Ubatian's hand, a huge beast abruptly jumped out of the spirit beast space and swiped its claws at the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal. Ma Shichen didn't even look at it. A wisp of wood spirit energy attached to her long sword softly attacked the huge spirit beast. Meanwhile, on the other side, Ubatian took the opportunity to turn around. Like a great rock spreading its wings, he aggressively pounced toward Xiao Mu. As long as he succeeded, Arbor would be in his hands. At that time, no matter how powerful these people were, they would have to obediently submit to him, Ubatian. Ubatian's iron claw was about to grip Xiao Mu's neck. Suddenly, a sword shot out from the side and quickly deflected Ubatian's claws. Ubatian was furious. He turned to look and couldn't help but roar, "What are you doing?" The man who attacked him was one of his subordinates. He must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts. How dare he attack him? The subordinate was so frightened that his face turned pale. He stammered, I didn't do it on purpose. Deputy Hall Master, shut up. Ubatian slapped the subordinate blocking his way. Like chopping vegetables, the young man's head was chopped to the side. Arbor couldn't help but shake his head. Patriarch, you're too ruthless. Chapter 4688. In any case, that person was still his subordinate. Although he had been controlled by her telekinesis midway and had rushed over to block the claw for her. But in essence, that person had not done so willingly. And Ubatian, this obstinate and self-opinionated old man, did not even give him a chance to explain himself before killing him. Deputy Hall Master. Arbor coldly glanced at Ubatian. You are the Flying Heavens Deputy Hall Master. Ubatian looked at her with a cold smile. You don't need to know who I am. You only need to know that what's going on. This time, Ubatian was truly stunned. He had seen very clearly just now that when his iron claw reached for Arbor, a heavenly fate disciple had suddenly turned around and blocked the claw for her with a blade. Ubatian glared angrily at Arbor. Little girl, do you think I don't know that you are actually someone with witchcraft? Ignorant and ill-informed. Arbor disdainfully glanced at him, then glanced behind Ubatian. Ubatian immediately turned his head back vigilantly. Who would have thought that there was no one behind him at all? He instantly realized that he had been tricked. But it was too late. Arbor's startled swan dagger twirled with a gorgeous light and quickly moved to the old man's side, stabbing directly at his neck. Dang, dang, dang. After a few stabs, Arbor could not help but be stunned. She thought to herself, this Ubatian's body has been modified to be like an iron bastion. Is it this sturdy? There are no flaws at all. The water spirit's power to turn ice is actually useless against him. When she looked up again, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, who had finished off the large beast, had already floated to Arbor's side. He glanced at Ubatian with a cold expression. This person has a lot of rhinoceros-skinned people with him, Ji Chen said softly. Because after killing a group of rhinoceros-skinned people, the number of rhinoceros-skinned people in the enemy camp had suddenly doubled. It was clear that someone had a storage talisman or a spatial spirit artifact, secretly releasing a continuous stream of battle power. It's fine. Pass down the order to kill the Heavenly Fate team in batches. 30 teams will go first, and the rest will rest. After that, we'll take turns. Arbor said coldly. He thought coldly in his heart, I'd like to see who will be the one to die of exhaustion. There were 30,000 elite members of the Triple Kill Heavenly Fate squad on this island as long as there were no accidents. It was impossible for Ubatian to escape from this place. As she thought about it, she felt an inexplicable sense of irritation. Something flashed through her mind, but she couldn't remember what it was. Ubatian coldly ordered, prepare the Godstone cannons at the back. As he spoke, several divine stone cannons appeared in front of the defensive formation. They were pushed forward by more than a dozen people. On Arbor's side, the Kill Heaven's Fate team was frantically killing the rhinoceros-skinned mutants. However, their numbers were like a steady stream, gradually increasing. Killing the Heavenly Fate battle team had left them feeling a little tired. Fortunately, they had obeyed Arbor's orders and prepared 4 large groups of people. Every round, they would take turns, and there would always be time to catch their breaths and recover. As they spoke, the Heavenly Fate members at the back began to attack the defensive formation under the cover of Ubatian and the others. They planned to use the Godstone cannons to blast open the defensive formation and rush into the snowy mountain valley to rescue Wuxia. Flying Paradise was really a big deal. Xiao Mu looked on coldly from the sidelines as they fooled around. If they could blast it open, it would be her loss. Chapter 4689. Did Ubatian think the defensive talisman array was a joke? That was a defensive array that she had stacked countless times. Just the handful of peerless purple talismans that he had spilled out had already reached a terrifying level that no one could estimate. Even if she used so many god stone cannons to bombard it, it would still be futile in less than half a month. Besides, as long as she continued to replenish talisman energy, this defensive array would be destroyed. It would be a fool's dream if he wanted to destroy it. She didn't remind Ubatian of the mysteries of the talisman array. Xiao Mu had been watching coldly from the sidelines the entire time, watching this group of people jumping up and down and tormenting themselves in front of her like clowns. Ubatian's loyal and protective expression disgusted Xiao Mu a bit. What kind of magic potion did Mu Qingya feed him that he would save her at all costs? Arbor was very sure that today's incident wasn't ordered by the higher-ups of Tianyun. How could the higher-ups of Tianyun waste a large number of rhinoceros-skinned mutants to attack the island for a worthless Mu Qingya? Mu Qingya wasn't that noble, and she couldn't be that important. In other words, today's battle was definitely Ubatian's private action for Mu Qingya. She didn't expect a heartless woman like Mu Qingya to have so many idiots around her. How amazing! Arbor curled her lips and glanced at Ubatian casually. If Yu Hui knew this in the underworld, he would cry himself to death. Arbor shook her head and sneered. Back then, his father pushed him to his death for an ignorant woman. Now, for this woman, he wants to die together with me like a madman. You. Do you think you're worthy? You killed Yu Hui, Ubatian roared. How dare you make sarcastic remarks? Yu Hui was killed by me. Arbor nodded. He thought to himself, but I've already lost Yu Hui's life for this. I was poisoned and almost died. If the little tree didn't bear a holy fruit, Master Jojo wouldn't exist. Therefore, it was simply an eye for an eye, a quid pro quo. Ubatian glared at Arbor. Why do you have to go against Qingya? Arbor couldn't help but laugh when he heard this. However, the smile in her eyes was only on the surface and did not enter her eyes at all. When you say that, why don't you touch your conscience and ask yourself? You and I had never met when we were in Wuxia City. Why did you insist on using Jing Minyao's name when you were actually carrying out Mu Qingya's orders to destroy me? Patriarch, you don't seem to understand one thing. You're the ones who attacked first. Now, what right do you have to cry and shout that you can't beat me? Arbor, let Qingya go, and we'll forget about what happened between us. What a touching truth. Arbor looked at him sarcastically. Kill them. Arbor raised his hand and released 2 Swanee holy beasts. Without any explanation, they charged towards Ubatian. Everyone saw 2 gorgeous shadows, one purple and one black, streaking across the sky. Shocked, Ubatian hurriedly summoned a group of rhinoceros-skinned people to protect him. However, the 2 holy beasts had already broken through the crowd and pounced on him. They were so fast that he had no time to react. Chapter 4690. Block it. Ubatian roared angrily. At the same time, his body changed again. A pair of rhinoceros horns grew out of his head, and a complete rhinoceros hide wrapped around his chest and back in an instant, playing a protective role. It wasn't the first time Arbor had seen a demon cultivator mutate. She just felt that Ubatian's rhinoceros hide was a little extreme. She knew that Tianyun had an extremely significant effect in transforming the human body. They had always tried to turn normal people into mutants, and even tried to do it on cultivators. It was obvious that Tianyun had made some breakthrough in his research on demon cultivators. Ubatian wrapped himself in rhinoceros hide and hid in the crowd of rhinoceroses. A hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. The information Tianyun had gathered about Arbor covered all aspects. It included how many holy beasts had appeared around her, how many transcendent realm cultivators she had, and the latest information that she might have spirit realm. It could be said that he had investigated everything in great detail. However, legends and hearsay were one thing. At this moment, witnessing her summoning 2 Swanee sacred beasts without saying a word was another matter altogether. Ubatian's eyes flashed with madness. No one knew what he was thinking right now. If he could make use of the 2 Swanee saint beasts. Ubatian couldn't help but take a deep breath when he thought of this. He carefully wrapped himself in rhinoceros hide and moved a few steps behind the rhinoceroses. Then he shouted, focus fire on the defensive wall to the east. No matter what method you use, break it first. Before he could finish his words, he suddenly heard a rumbling sound coming from above his head. When he looked up, he saw a huge iron ball rolling down from behind. Yu Baishan's eyes bulged slightly. He really didn't expect a metal ball so big that 10 people couldn't wrap their arms around it to drop down from the sky. Pay attention to defense. Yu Badian shouted again. The rhinoceros-skinned people were like moving corpses that had no thoughts of their own. Hearing this, they all gathered and fought to block the iron ball for Yu Badian. Yu Badian saw that something was wrong. It seemed that even a dozen rhinoceros-skinned men would not be able to withstand the crushing force of the iron ball. If they didn't run now, when would they? He scrambled out of the mutated crowd and turned around to look at the big iron ball that was emitting a black light above the rhinoceros-skinned people. Before he could even breathe a sigh of relief, he couldn't help but roar, "Disperse!" At the same time, the metal ball opened up from the middle like metal flower petals, spreading out piece by piece. Black liquid gushed out of it and shot toward the rhinoceros-skinned people, accompanied by extremely thin silver needles that looked like gadflies. What the hell is this? Yu Baishan's pupils shrank. At this moment, he wished that his parents had given him 2 more legs so that he could run faster. Arbor stared fixedly at that large iron ball for a long time before curling his lips and muttering to himself, "The iron gallbladder filiform needle made by Duan Yu looks quite powerful." It was just that its appearance was really ugly. The last time he asked her how much poison she wanted, it turned out that it was all mixed in with the hidden weapons. In just a few moments, black smoke began to rise from the rhinoceros-skinned man's venom-drenched body. Chapter 4691. Skin and flesh fell off one after another. It was disgusting and horrifying to look at with the naked eye. Arbor shifted his gaze and looked in Yu Baishan's direction. "Family head Yu, since you're here, why are you in such a hurry to leave?" Arbor waved his hand in the air, his eyes cold and murderous. "Why don't you stay here and become fertilizer?" The 2 Swanee sacred beasts that were originally scattering the rhinoceros-skinned humans abruptly turned around and swooped down in Yu Baishan's direction again. The power of a sacred beast's attack was no laughing matter. How would Yu Badian dare to meet them head-on? He could only try his best to avoid them. Unfortunately, the 2 Swanee sacred beasts had received the little master's order and were determined not to let him go. After swooping down and slapping the 2 rhinoceros-skinned humans away, the 2 Swanee let out a long cry and attacked Yu Badian in a pincer attack, one from the front and one from the back. How would Yu Badian dare to meet them head-on? He hastily pulled a few rhinoceros-skinned humans in front of him and fled toward the defensive wall. Right now, he was feeling a bit anxious and irritated. Arbor's guess was correct. He had privately decided to rescue Qinya this time. He hadn't received any instructions or acknowledgement from Tianyan's higher-ups. It looked like the mutant rhinoceros-skinned humans he brought had suffered heavy casualties. He wouldn't be able to explain himself when he returned. If he still couldn't rescue Qinya after sacrificing so much, then all his previous efforts would be for naught, and the losses would outweigh the gains. When Yu Badian considered this, his hatred for the little stoic rose steadily to the highest point. It was all this stoic's fault for opposing Qinya at every turn and going against them at every turn. If this stoic hadn't caused so much trouble, Qinya would still be sitting peacefully in Tianyan's headquarters as the high and mighty soaring heavens hall master. Qinya's many years of hard work and painstaking effort were all ruined by this damned little stoic. Even he felt that it wasn't worth it for Qinya, let alone Qinya. Yu Badian slammed his head into the defensive wall. Only then did he realize that he had nowhere to run. His eyes were red as he turned around and glared at the 2 Swanee hovering in the air. He roared, "Come on. You forced me into this situation. If you have the guts, come at me." The 2 Swanee sacred beasts let out a shrill cry and swooped down from the left and right. Yu Baishan's heartbeat quickened. He counted 3, 2, 1 in his heart. He suddenly turned around and pushed the god's stone cannon out. Braving the sudden gust of wind caused by the holy beast's pouncing attack, he laughed maniacally. His eyes were filled with rage and viciousness. With one hand, he threw all the divine stones he had into the machine. He let out a thunderous roar, "All of you, go to hell." Boom! When the god's stone cannon fired, because of the excessive amount of god's stones, the entire god's stone cannon couldn't bear the heavy load and suddenly exploded. Ubatian was sent flying, but he didn't forget to raise his head and stare fiercely at the two Swanee sacred beasts in the sky. His divine sense had already made all the necessary preparations. Once these two saint beasts were seriously injured and on the verge of death, he decided to immediately send his divine sense into their spiritual consciousness. No. One was fine, but it would be difficult to control two at the same time. But if there was only one, Ubatian suddenly felt like his head was being pricked by needles, as if countless tiny silver needles were uniformly stabbing his brain. You're tuning into the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.